Certainly, sir. My name is David Gross, I'm a resident here at the county. I had an opportunity to review the report from Fitch and Associates, all 374 pages. And what it determines is that your current EMS is meeting standards. It's actually reasonably well aligned within the benchmarks provided. So to add for additional funding for a organization that's already meeting standards seems to be ineffective. Second of all, for fire rescue recommendations on, I think it was 313 or 295 of the report, says that you could use an additional fire station. That would only increase your response time a little less than 2%. Right now, you have a response time that's 1 minute, 21 seconds over benchmark. So by adding additional station, you'd increase that to down to the 10-minute benchmark is where they'd like to get. The question is, where are you going to put that station? Even if you decide you want to spend the money to allocate it, whose house is that going to buy? Which house? Where in the county? You've got a lot of urban area you have to cover. So the progressive plan that you have in place works very well, and your report actually has a way for you to maintain this 2% or 90% benchmark. And I asked the commissioners to really read this report, especially the recommendations on how they suggest you should employ your personnel. Understand fire is an important thing. What that doesn't take into account is the second thing this afternoon, and that is your additional impacts from your expansions of Sunseeker Resort and the influx of new people. That will address in the second meeting this afternoon. That report is actually very well founded, and I'm going to ask that those that haven't read the report, although it is voluminous, the recommendation should be heeded because it is rather well done from a standpoint. And I've been in municipal planning and examination of expenditures for a lot of years. They did a very good report for you.
My name is Anthony Lucano. First time here. Say your address and all that?
No, just your name is only for the record.
Okay. My concern is probably not part of your agenda for today. I'm finding out it's mostly your agenda for today was about the fire departments and stuff like that. But I was here, I wanted to come here, and I've only been here in this county for like 4.5, 5 years now. So with the storm that we recently went through, I had some concerns. Okay, and the only place I can bring them is here. So if this is not part of your agenda, I will gladly sit down. But
Can you still tell me what your issue is?
my issue is that I just got my recent tax bill, and I noticed that the trash pickup is going up in cost.
Okay.
And I'm wondering why that is.
Okay,
Because,
that is not part of this agenda.
Okay.
And I think we probably have somebody here that might be able to assist you on the side.
not a problem.
Okay, so if somebody is here that can address that for him, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Okay, have a good evening.
Yes, sir, you too.
My name is Phil Jacobus, live on Eastern Drive. 13 years ago, my wife and I came down here, we bought a home, first home in Deep Creek, and the second year down, we snowboarded 1 year. Second year down, I come down, and there's this big sign as you come up Deep Creek Boulevard saying we're going to get new sidewalks. If the sales tax is approved, the 1 penny, additional 1%, excuse me, additional sales tax. So I thought, well, that's pretty good. So they did put the sidewalk in right in front of our house. It was great. A lot of people used the sidewalk. And then they continued on, but they stopped Deep Creek Boulevard at Rio. And I couldn't understand why they didn't keep going, other than it cost money to do that, I know. But the sales tax was approved. I thought it was kind of a bait to that, and we wouldn't need your vote on this thing. We all did. And then I got involved with the MSBU. I've been on the MSBU for 10 years, for Deep Creek, still am. And each year that they
I have Sharon Fineo and Karina Metz.
Hi, how are you guys doing? Kat Pellegrino. So this is for the MSBU, not the budget?
Correct,
Which one is
MSBU.
longer? Okay, great. So this is going to be short and sweet. Basically, as far as the firefighters go, they deserve great pay. The higher echelon, on the other hand, aren't the ones running into the building, and they're probably paid too much. And budget-wise, you need to cut the budget and be more responsible with the budget. That's my personal opinion on that. Thanks.
Thank you.
This is not going to be as well done as I thought it was going to be, because I thought I had 5 minutes. So I'm going to be editing as I go, so we may, I may get a little tongue-tied, please forgive me.
And
Good
please,
evening, commissioners. Good evening, citizens of Charlotte County.
and please speak in the microphone, sir, if I can.
I thought they could. Thank you. Okay, I looked up, there was an awful lot of conversation in the last meeting about this, the last regular meeting, and a lot of reporting and discussion about response time and admonishment of the population about how we don't care about response time. So I thought I should look it all up. So here are the stats. Charlotte County's response time does not seem on its face to be very good. Charlotte County's response time is 9.92 minutes year 2021 to 2022. Lee County's response time, even though their calculations are a little bit different because their structure is a little bit different, is 8.59. That's their strike goal, and they hover around that time, they told me, also for the same year. Sarasota, unfortunately, gave me 22 to 23, which wasn't fair because it didn't take into account Hurricane Ian. And theirs for this past year, or this up until now, is approximately 6 minutes. Hernando County, they're at approximately 6.68 minutes. And I'd like to take, even though this doesn't sound good on its face, I really want to thank the firefighters and emergency response people for the excellent job that they've done, because you're going to see in it right here how great it really is. You see, Charlotte County has 858 square miles. And let's see, Lee County has 1,212 square miles. Sarasota County has 725 square miles, and Hernando is 472.97 miles. Now, here's where the crux of the matter is. Charlotte County has 236.20 people per square mile. Now, again, 236.20. Lee has 678.59 people per square mile. Sarasota has 637.64 people per square mile. And Hernando has almost double Charlotte County, not triple, like the last two, 483.44 people per square mile, and this is the projected rate according to the United States Census Bureau. Now, when you do the math on this and the actual response time, it means that it breaks down to this. Charlotte County is actually getting there 65% faster than the other counties.
Can you wrap up because your time has expired?
Okay, these are quick.
Yes, ma'am.
65% quicker than Lee County, getting there, let's see, approximately 51% quicker than Sarasota County, and they're getting about 3/4.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm sorry.
All right.
I gave you some extra time, but I do have to cut you off.
The point is, when you calculate all of it,
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
The
We
stats
appreciate
are
it.
accurate.
My next speaker is Karina Metz.
Wow.
And then I have David Clark and David Ferguson. Karina Metz.
I'm going to skip.
Okay, thank you. I'll move that. And David Clark. Very good. And then David Ferguson and John B.
David Clark, thank you for being here and the time to listen to us. Sorry, I have a little bit of drive now after surgery.
Microphone.
I'm here about
Get a
the,
little closer to the mic for us. There you go.
I'm here to talk about the Suncoast Waterway increase from $700 to $1,500. So they did a dredge there about 10 or 12 years ago. and it was $700,000. And it worked out to be about $700 per unit. There's about 100 units in that area. Now the proposal is to do another dredge, because some of the areas have filled in, and it's going to go up to $1,500 a year over the next 7 years. First of all, I'd like to propose that we postpone or not pass the increase at this time. Since the last meeting, or since the postcards went out, there's been a lot of interest in the neighborhood, and we've now got some people that are willing to be on an advisory board. I think there's a lot of issues that need to be worked out before we know what the cost might be. It looks like the problem areas are in the interior canals, not the part that goes out into the river, which doesn't really make sense. To me, it almost sounds like stilt runoff, and we probably should figure out why it filled in before we spend more money to redredge it. Another reason I think we should postpone it so we can better understand, $1,500 per unit. There's some lots in the area that, way back when they developed it, there were 60-foot lots. So a lot of the properties are really a lot and a half, and then so they take 3 60-foot lots and make 2 90s. Right now, some people are paying
Course of the Murdoch Center over there, and it's just not gonna improve. You guys are just gonna keep imposing things on us, and it's just gonna eventually break. Those things only stretch so far before they break. And it's the same thing with, you've got your guys' charter review. You guys live by your charter review. That is essentially our county constitution, according to a document request. That's what you guys use, the charter review board, but you appoint those folks to be our voice. How does that work? So essentially, this is run by the state, and you guys work with the state and not for the county, for the people of this county. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Next, I have Mike Moses, and
7 smiling faces up there, instead of 5 with 2 backs of heads. So I hope it's going to be a sign of the future. I am a member of Waterway Advisory, and one of the things, I've been on there for a long time, one of the things that surprised me is on the sheet, it shows that we have a maximum rate of $679. And I wondered how that came about. Now, we're not paying that, nowhere near that, but it does kind of wake you up and you look at it and say, good golly, it could go to $679. I'm wondering who and how is that maximum rate established? I mean, I've been there almost 10 years and I haven't had a vote or a suggestion or a recommendation or anything. So I just wondered where it came about. So if somebody could answer that for me. The MSBU that we have is Buena Vista. It's the confluence of the Sunrise Waterway, Elkham, and the other canals to the east towards the 41 Bridge. And to the west, we have East Spring Lake and West Spring Lake, which comes together, and it makes a 90-degree turn as it hits Sunrise Waterway at the beach complex. And that's been a real problem because we got constantly having sandworms build up there, and it's just an ongoing thing. But Spring Lake does not have an MSBU. There's no contribution from them. I mean, there's hundreds of houses up their waterways, and I'm wondering why that, we're not getting some compensation and some help from them, frankly. Because the cost of everything's going up. We've already had prices go up on our dredging, probably close to 100% over what we thought it was going to be. And that's a massive increase. And I think it's unfair. Plus, we've got an MSB to the north of us that pays a fraction of what we do, but yet they use our waterways. So there needs to be some fairness. I believe in fairness about everything. So I'd appreciate some help with regard to that. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Moses?
Short people. When I heard about the tax increase for the fire service, I was thinking, what were they thinking? Are they 5%. It's ridiculous. It's disgusting. They may use car salesmen it and say, well, you know, a lot of people don't like it, so we'll only do 20%, but it's too much. Here's the thing. Robert Kennedy was being interviewed on Newsmax, and he said that currently there is a $5,000 difference below what the cost of living is. $5,000, okay, and that's nationally. And I would say that that's locally too. You know, the cost of living is going up. It's skyrocketing. Insurance, house insurance is doubled in a lot of places, if it's there at all. Gas is a third up. Groceries often are at least 50% up for major items. People are struggling. People are tightening their belt. But the county doesn't have to do that. They have to tighten the noose. And that's what you're doing. For the MSBU, there is impact fees that are supposed to cover things like fire, schools, and other kinds of stuff. Commissioner Deutsch was at a meeting where your budget director talked about that the only impact fee that you guys had, and you've changed that, but was for transportation, okay? The impact fee should be covering those kinds of new fire stations that you say that you need. Not MSBUs, not 1% supplementals. The citizens are rightfully screaming about this. If you go to next door and look at the conversations that have been had where people are saying that I can't afford stuff anymore, you would be shocked. You should be doing that. You should be sensitive to that. It's just beyond frustrating to see what's going on. And I know the reality of what the politics are here. Because if you want to raise money, which is what governments do, what governments always do, because you want to gentrify Charlotte County, then you can't do it by the real estate tax. You got to do it by fees, permits, MSBUs, and that's what you're doing. And how do you do that for the MSBUs? Well, you go and get a consulting firm. And the consulting firm gives you reams of data, 300 pages of data. And you say, wow, so much data. And my time is up.
Thank you, sir. Then I have Renee Petro and Bill Ferris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Chad McCollum. I'm the District Vice President for Charlotte County Fire and EMS Union. I represent over 260 firefighters and paramedics that serve our community. I'm speaking in support of the proposed increase to the fire assessment MSBU. To the public here tonight, please know, the men and women of Charlotte County Fire and EMS are here to serve you. When you call 911, we respond. Whether it's for a loved one having a heart attack, or your smoke detector needs its batteries changed. It's your loved one having a stroke or your cat stuck under your shed. We're here for you. Our desire to serve, our dedication to our service and craft are represented every time you call. We were there for you during COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic. We were there for you during and after Hurricane Ian. I assure you we will continue to be there for you no matter what comes next. But folks, we are stretched thin. The men and women of Charlotte County Fire and EMS are sacrificing their most precious resource, it's their time. Extra shifts, increased call volumes, increased emotional and physical stress. These things are adding up. Increased response times have lasting consequences. When you're having a stroke, every minute that stroke goes untreated, your loved one is losing something. Possibly the ability to talk or walk, or maybe the loss of a cherished memory. The current assessment funding will simply not support the growth that our community is currently seeing. This administration and Fire Chief Fair have a plan supported by a third-party professional study, objective data to help guide their decisions. A plan to reduce those response times, but the plan requires additional funding. That requires sacrifice from everyone in the community. This new funding will help pay for fire stations, fire engines, and ambulances, but most importantly, men and women to properly staff those resources. On behalf of the 270-plus firefighters and paramedics that I represent, the dedicated professional women of Charlotte County Fire and EMS, thank you for providing this community with the best fire and EMS service. We will continue to serve, but we will need the tools and people to do that. And this assessment increase will help provide those resources. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, I have Dave Ferris and also Dave Kesselman.
Hello, my name is Renee Petro. I've been a business owner and a resident of Charlotte County for over 30 years. My business is in Port Charlotte, and I live in the very, very back of Deep Creek. I did not have time to read 300 pages or 374 pages or study percentages or any of that baloney, or important stuff, sorry. But I'm coming to you from an emotional level. My house caught on fire. We were not home. We never think about the fire department or the ambulance as it's passing by us, except to stop traffic and, I'm late for work. But when your house is on fire, the first thing you think of, our son came home from middle school, went to go in the house and found the house on fire. He, from the neighbor's house, called 911. By the time I got to the very back of Deep Creek from Port Charlotte with my house on fire, I had the fire department there, the paramedics there checking out my son. They called, my dogs had been killed, both of them, and the fire department had called somebody to help me with my dogs. They were kind, they were compassionate. And since then, we have become a big supporter of the fire department and EMS. Until you need them, I don't care how much my taxes go up, everything goes up. I'm a business owner, my electric goes up, my rent goes up. You have to support your community if things go up. We have so many people. Just in the back, very back of Deep Creek, there's 100 new cars where I live. So if we can't increase fire and EMS, who's gonna come when your house is on fire? And I know this is emotional. It's emotional for me when you see your dogs dead lying there or your children's life in danger. Until you have a fire, you don't know how important fire and EMS is. So thank you. And I know all of you are struggling. I know money's tight. I see it. I'm in business and I have to pay my bills too. But I think this is one thing we can't sacrifice. It's one thing. Maybe don't dredge the lake. Pay for the firefighters to have better equipment. We need to take care of our firefighters and EMS for ourselves, for our house being on fire, for your mom having a stroke, your dad having a heart attack. These are not things that are negotiable. Thank you for listening.
And then Joyce Peters, I think it says.
Bill Ferris, Charlotte County taxpayer and resident for over 38 years. Good evening, commissioners and staff. I see you took my advice and actually had a public hearing where all the public could see and hear you. I can't believe with the upcoming election year you're actually considering raising our taxes. I have friends and neighbors still trying to settle with insurance companies a year after Hurricane Ian. Same group of friends and neighbors worried about the cost of insurance this coming year because our Florida governor and his legislature think it's more important to run for president and go after Disney than it is to address the issues of insurance, as we are the highest in the country. The MSBU system is outdated and broken. I've been told that we have an MSBU system, as there are only a few in the state. Commissioner Doherty brought this to my attention, that we don't have the density. You're never going to have the density to continue to tax the people out of the residences. The same people that work for minimum wage, that work supposedly at Sunseeker, that cut your grass, that service you at the restaurants, can't afford to live in this county because the houses they are renting cannot be afforded for them because taxes are so high on the owners in order to maintain them. It's time for this board to start living in what the county residents' means and not yours. I just can't believe that after all these years that we don't have a way, after some of the numbers I've heard from some of the people speaking here, that we didn't look into this and find out what was going on. Why is it necessary for us to continue to take the fall? The same people, I'm now retired, at home taking care of my 88-year-old dad and 87-year-old mom. I'm on a fixed income now. And I'm going to worry about my insurance next year. I have State Farm. I paid for it in June. I'm covered till June. What's going to happen to me next year? The 25% raise on me is a 25% money out of my pocket to be able to take care of my parents. You guys have got to get your financial house in order. As I've said in this room before, you have two jobs: maintain infrastructure and keep the taxpayer happy. And judging by the people in this room, the taxpayers aren't happy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dave, do you want? Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Ms. Beers, you're up there. Go ahead. Go ahead. He won't lose his turn. Thank you, sir, for doing that.
My name is Joyce Pierce. I feel compelled to speak out against these MSBUs. They are totally out of control. These MSBUs give our government terrible power to force property owners to pay for whatever they choose. The MSBU rates go up, and we can do nothing about it. Why do public roads and services have MSBUs? Only gated communities with private roads should have MSBU regulation. Funds for roads should be taken out of the county from the general revenue. Ask Lee County. They don't have MSBUs. How can they make it and not have MSBUs? They were appalled when we said something to people from Lee County, that we pay MSBUs on our regular roads that we lived and have lived in there for years and years. We didn't have an MSBU. We shouldn't have an MSBU. They're county roads. They're taken care of by the county, and they should not have MSBUs. Anyway, I wonder who makes these crazy laws. These people are given unlimited power to dramatically control our lives. What is happening? When will our commissioners listen to the people and do what we want? The people that vote them into office. With all these countless speeches and meetings I've gone to for 30 years, I've come to think I beat my head against the wall because it's always no, no, no. Whatever we say, the county votes yes for it, yes for it, yes for it. Doesn't matter what we say, doesn't matter what the people want. You vote yes, it's in. Well, if we don't have the money for it, we shouldn't be doing it. Not just raising prices and have MSBUs, those guys. And I also was unbelievable to hear about this ridiculous law about you can't cut your trees down if you own a property. You cannot cut the trees down, and they even charge you for each inch of a tree that you do cut down when you do have some kind of a permit. What is happening? Who thought that crazy one up? You know, is this still America? Don't we have our own property and our own rights? Shouldn't our commissioners listen to us, do what we want? And if there's not enough money in the kitty to do it, just don't raise taxes and give the higher MSBUs. Live within your budget like we all have to do. Live within our budget. So I urge your commissioners to listen to our voters. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I have Matthew, I can't. I'm sorry? Thank you, and you can say what you can to the microphone. Mr. Kessler, please go ahead.
Dave Kessler, for the record, you cut me short, so I can't say much nice about the fire department that I had to say. So, there's many people here tonight. They're here to demand change in the commissioner's culture of tax and spend. Speaking for a large group of constituents, we're not here for a discount. We want the 25% increase in fire assessment dropped altogether, along with the other increases. Government employees shouldn't be getting paid more than the rest of us. It's not the purpose of American government to make millionaires out of public servants. The main reason why so many state and local governments are on the verge of bankruptcy is the combination of government-run monopolies and government employee unions. My problem is more with the unions, and I love the firefighters. I'll give my view on myself. Unions pay politicians to raise taxes to cover high salaries, while politicians pay back the unions with the raises. The enormous power of government employee unions effectively transfers the power to tax from voters to unions. These unions can easily entice elected officials to raise taxes to meet their demands. It is they, not the voters, who control the rate of taxation. This is taxation without representation. I'll demonstrate what happens if a commissioner supports and panders to a union. At least 113 fire EMS employees gave to Commissioner Deutsch in just 4 days, 48 giving $2 to $3 to counteract the huge $3,000 of donations by 3 giant fire PACs. This is a direct conflict of interest. Another valuable contribution to politicians is massive get-out-the-vote efforts. For an example, at my voting location, it was me against 3 firefighters holding candidate signs for Commissioner Constance and Deutsch. Back in 2014, the local firefighters union celebrated on Facebook the defeat of the Tea Party candidate, the taxed enough already candidate. The tactic used to raise these taxes is the typical public safety. The fact that 72% of the budget is going towards salaries, many of them highly exorbitant, especially upper levels, flies in the face of public safety. There's little money left for safe equipment. And I'm going to talk about the rest probably in the next, but I just want to start. Do I have any time left? Additionally, government bureaucrats and politicians conspire against us with a false competition between counties. Politicians say they have to spend more than other counties with over-the-top salaries or lose employees, while the other counties' politicians are saying the same thing. The Florida Association of Counties has 377 county commissioners involved. Commissioner Truex is the president of that organization. Why can't they simply get together and set a maximum pay scale so the taxpayers don't get plundered? I'll finish it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
I'm Matthew Sandar. I'm from Sullivan on Port Charlotte. I wanted to address 3 issues. One of them is the attendance tonight. I spoke at the last meeting, and I remember mentioning that I was concerned because of the people that I think would have overwhelmed this room the last time we were here. I couldn't even get through the hallways. I had to walk outside around the building to go from one side to the other. I think it's important that we contemplate, not only for this kind of a hearing, which I think is great timing-wise and location-wise, anticipate. I gather from the speaking after we all spoke that a lot of people reached out about their concerns about this issue, but still we were faced with thousands of people not able to speak, and they were more frustrated they give up. So now you see this a month later, you have a venue, but people are burnt out about the situation. They're disheartened that they don't feel like they are represented at all. They don't think they'll have a voice. Yeah. So when you talk to them, they don't even want to come. So I
You interrupted his time and add 5 seconds to it.
so anyway, that's one big concern. So I hope that if you see like that cycle of emails coming in, if you can move to this venue in anticipation of that, I'd really appreciate it. And then having more meetings in a transparent time so the working people can come here. I can't be here on time when I'm leaving work at a 5 o'clock meeting, maybe 6:30. I think that would be more appropriate in my opinion. I wish for that. I asked for the school board. Speaking of that topic, the union thing, I'm a teacher and I've had the option of unions before. And I see this situation that was spoken about previously. There is a corrupt cycle, much like when builders are donating and then suddenly there's something passed that might allow for a big complex to be built and other things to be impacted. And now we're having to raise taxes on people, for people who are coming into the county. People who are already here are paying to subsidize that and the new business that they don't even want here. So if you were to have the people who are coming pay the impact and not ask the people to pick up the slack for the people they don't even want here to come, I think that would be highly valuable. Then you have the cycle of the unions. Now, FDR thought this was communist. You have a union, and they literally get public money directly for their paycheck, and then in turn, they donate for more raises, more money, and it's a circle, a corrupt circle that you would call corporatist if it's the builders, but it's the same cronyism, and at best, it looks really bad. It's got to be fixed. It cannot be happening. Charlotte County could lead the way on this kind of an issue. So I encourage you, eliminate the appearance of corruption, if not outright corruption, even if not intended. Like, it just looks really bad when people are giving money, they elect a candidate, they get a raise. We've got to look at how we can cut spending. This is ridiculous. I can't believe how many people were angry and just gave up and walked out of that place. They could not handle it. They're not even here, they're still angry.
Yep.
It's really getting bad. And this thing about recall, it's real. People are like, how do we censure them? How do we recall them?
Yep.
We're done.
Yep.
That's how they talk. That's what I get all the time. So I ask you, please, 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 consider these conflicts and cycles that we've been approaching. Consider the transparency. You've got to reach out to these people or they're lost. Thank you.
Neighbor or Haber? Dave Calen's first.
Paul Haber.
Actually, today it's you, Tammy, and he's next. He's third. You're up now.
They were in before me.
Yes, Dave Calen, Tammy Calen, and then Mr. Haber.
My name is David Galen Sr., live out in the Ranchettes, and I see that as taxation without representation. I won't get into what occurred. I think that's been hashed out enough. Has Charlotte County ever hired an accounting or auditing consulting firm to come in and evaluate every department and look for efficiencies and ways to improve processes and cut expenses? We do that a lot in the private sector. In my corporate experience, we would bring in people with the know and improve that process. If you've not done that, I would ask you to look at that. It's a fairly common practice. I am not a licensed financial advisor. This is not financial advice. It's only my opinion and information I've acquired and studied. Do you understand the financial cataclysmic train that's coming down the pike in months hitting this country financially?
Yep. Yeah.
Every outfit that I listen to, every advisor I listen to is warning up to the large banks. If you know what's coming, raising taxes at this time is ill-advised. If you're ill-informed and don't know about it, you need to do some digging and understanding what's going on. U.S. interest yield curve, short and long term, is its worst position since 1928. We know what happened in 1929. All the red bells and whistles are going off financially for what's happened. Key indicators. For the first time in history, the financial yield curve globally has inverted. Never has happened before. The 10-year bond performance is the worst performance in 3 consecutive years of losses. The last time it was this bad was 1787. Not 1987, 1787. If you look at the BRICS nations competing against the West and the SWIFT system, our allies are jumping ship and going over. They're looking to replace the dollar as the reserve currency because of the way we have manhandled countries as a nation. When we lose that, whether that's the Japanese yuan, or whether it's the International Monetary Fund's IMF, which I think, the International Monetary Fund's SDR, Special Drawing Rights, that's where I think it's going. We're taking a 36% haircut for all our international settlements. It's going in the tank. Delinquencies on credit cards and car payments are exploding. Personal credit on credit cards has hit a new milestone, $1 trillion.
Your time is departure, but thank you.
I thought I had 5 minutes, but thank you.
Dave, I don't have to follow you. Well, I didn't have his then. So I marked that one as senior. If I can get one as junior, please. Oh, you got it? Thank you. All right, come on. I wasn't going to keep you.
Gentlemen, this is the proper venue to have had the last meeting. But as the saying goes, you're a day late and $1 short. The constituents that wanted to address you at the last meeting, and to be able to hear the other constituents speak, They're no longer here. As the previous gentleman spoke, they're left and they're angry. I want to let our firefighters know that I have the utmost respect for them. At a very young age, my life was saved by our EMS. Not this county, but Fairfax County, Virginia. So I owe them my life. With that, we still have checks and balances. We still have to control the spending. The focus of the last fire tax hearing was over the response times. We're in line, for the most part, with our surrounding communities. Again, I did speak at the last hearing about my potential tax increase of upwards of $15,000. After a bit of research, I was able to find out that yes, you guys sent me erroneous information. This came from your taxing authority. I've been able to work through it with the property appraiser's office to find out, yes, I'm still going to be hit substantially, but not as high. However, not before one of you called me and blasted me for my comments, then doubled down on a local radio show. In the words of Ronald Reagan, he put it best, the 9 words should scare you the most. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. In my case, Mr. Reagan was absolutely right. I don't know what else I can say at this point to this board, because you all walk in and you have your preconceived decision to what you're going to make. We're struggling. We're all struggling. I know most of your net worths. You're not even in the same class as 90% of your constituents. We feel it. It hurts. And while it may not be totally your fault, you look what our administration is doing to our nation, I lay the 90% blame there, but you all can help. Reduce this. Quit creating the crisis and then saying we're reducing from the 25% to be the hero. Because at the end of the day, you're not the hero. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Kaylin, I keep hearing people say it's only $51 a tax increase. I also remember them telling us it's only a mask, it's only 2 weeks to flatten the curve and so on. But it's not just about $51. It's the increased prices of everything from gas, groceries, utilities, insurances, etc. The only thing that hasn't risen for most of us is our paychecks. Many are struggling to make ends meet in this economy, and yet the county and the board haven't even looked at the budget to analyze where cuts can be made. It is inequitable and inexcusable to raise taxes without any regard to the impact on the people. This board chose to proceed with the last hearing knowing they were violating the rights of the people because there wasn't enough space. And when the people stood before you pleading, begging, some nearly in tears, expressing the hardships of the economy, and many still recovering from the hurricane, and battling with insurance company, this board, without deliberation, reflection, or evaluation, quickly passed the tax increase. In a recent conversation, I was asked which commissioner represents me. I responded, no one represents me on this board. They have abandoned the Charlotte Ranchettes, and in fact, none of them represent you or anyone in this county. This board has been selected to rule over us. We have greed, corruption, fraudulent elections, and those in power who have placed self-interest of getting rich from backdoor deals and sweetheart contracts. It's no different than the swamp in D.C. And now a member of this board, Mr. Tiseo, has been harassing and attempting to intimidate my husband. He called after my husband was in the ER. Any respectful person would have postponed that conversation until my husband was feeling better. But Mr. Tiseo continued wanting and demanding lists of people's names who conducted business with us. Emails were received and were not responded to. At an REC meeting, Mr. Teseo became very hostile and aggressive in an argument, and there were plenty of witnesses. But when Mr. Teseo on a local broadcast radio called out a private citizen on a public forum, that is a vicious attack and is reprehensible conduct and behavior of a political person using their power against a private citizen. It is despicable. You should be focusing on the people who are still homeless after almost a year, while there are 3 lots of FEMA trailers and campers waiting for them. It is time for the people to stop living in fear. Your fear is a prison used to control and enslave you. We must protect and defend our children and the future. Find your strength, find your courage, stand up, fight for your freedom. The time is now or never. God bless America and all the patriots.
Okay, good evening. All Haver. This is not an anti-firefighter message at all. This is an anti-tax message. When I grew up, I was a little boy in my neighborhood. We had the fire department. Every year they would have a fair. Kids would come, we'd play, we'd hang around and jump all over the fire trucks. We'd run through the fire station, and it went on and on every year after year. We don't have any of that going on over here that I see. Anyways, but it's not this is not an anti-firefighter message. It's an anti-tax message. There could be other ways to get funds, many other ways, and to have a large increase like this, I think, is ridiculous, in my opinion. We have other ways to do it. We have a lot of smart people in Charlotte County. I don't know if the commissioners reach out to the people in Charlotte County. Literally reach out and say, hey, you guys are pretty smart. Do you have any other ideas than really raising taxes for the people, on the people here? This much. And of course we have to pay taxes. We want good fire stations and fire engines and proper equipment for our fire department. We want that. There's no question about that at all. So let's not pull on heartstrings about whether or not we know we're all adults here. Most of us, I think we're all adults. We know we need fire departments. Let's look at the Lahaina issue, right? The Lahaina issue in Hawaii. We have to look at that because it doesn't matter how many fire stations you have. It doesn't matter how many firemen you have. If the water's turned off, the fire continues to burn. Okay. I'm going to second what David Kayla said, and most of his stuff except for the personal messages. I didn't prepare a large speech. I work, my wife works, we get off of work, and we're in our 60s, going in our 60s, and we're still working. And we get a mortgage and stuff, and taxes do affect us on a corner lot. I think, is it correct that I'm going to get charged twice because I'm in a corner lot? Not sure about that yet. Still trying to figure out if that's, and I want to know why, if that's the case. I'm thinking if you're giving this high of a tax increase, I'm thinking, where did you fail? Where is it that you feel that you need to make up this money? Because I'm pretty sure the money's in our coffers for these projects. We needed to do that. There's fire stations that they want to tear down and acquisition land and get new fire stations. When we have fire stations that can be rebuilt and repaired, and my grandfather was a fireman in Chicago, 1910. Those fire stations lasted a long time before they took them down.
Okay, sir, thank you, your time.
Time's up? Okay.
Thank you. So do we have any more cards? Okay, we have no more cards, so we're going to move forward, and we'll turn it over to Mr. Berger for a presentation. Yes, turn it up. There you go.
Can you hear me?
For the record, Gordon Berger, Director of Budget and Administrative Services. A little different tonight than we're used to for our budget hearings. Because of the input from citizens around the MSBU's, we set this up first so that you could set the rates prior to going into the budget hearing. So this first section is on the MSBU's. You will tonight set the rates for the MSBU's. This is the final public hearing for that. And then we'll go into the budget hearing, which is the first public hearing for the budget. And then we'll have the second one on the 19th, right? Yes, the 19th. So the agenda for this, two MSBU's we want to highlight tonight. One fire and the other West County, West Charlotte stormwater. Those were the two that were highlighted that you asked us to bring back to you. And so we wanted to give some background information on this. We've been re-airing the public meeting from March when we went through the fire study and we went through the long-range fire trends. And so tonight we wanted to recap that very succinctly. So I'm going to ask Chief Fair to come. He's going to go through the operational piece of it, and then I'm going to come back up and go through the financial piece.
Jason Bear, Director of Public Safety for the record. So as we go through the fire EMS budget, or the fire EMS operational plan, this is what we put together for the 5-year strategic plan. This is what was presented to you back in March, so we'll walk through it again in a little bit more detail. So to start off, Charlotte County Fire EMS, it's an all-hazard approach to emergency response. So that is not just fire, but it's also EMS, it's hazardous materials, it's special operations, such as technical rescue, confined space, also has to do with marine operations and support of the airport operation as well. So within those divisions, we have operations, men and women in the field doing the job. We have the training division, fire prevention, support services, and emergency vehicle maintenance. That's what is covered through this MSBU. 277 certified personnel with 22 civilian support members, 17 firehouses, and we're just at about 38,000 calls per year, or last year. So when we look at our overall service demand, we're looking at an 18% increase just in the last 5 years, with 21% specifically on that EMS side. So again, looking at that 28,000. When you look at those numbers, you can see the increases most specifically in that 20, 21, and then 22. So as we had talked to back in March, we'll present it again here. There's really 3 things that are playing into putting this operational plan together and that strategic plan together. One of those has to do with what we call our peak call responses. So what this is the probability of having a second call within the same zone when there's a call already going. And so when you look at that, for example, a second call received in Station 1, 49% of the time, almost half the time, every other call that the crew runs, there's a second call coming in right behind it. So that just goes to show the volume in that area, and we call our call concurrency or that peak response time. You'll see Station 13, Station 2 are right there closely behind it. Then we have what we refer to as our temporal distribution. So this is really looking at the peak time, where we looked at the peak areas, having that second call. Now we're talking about the time. So that 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. is kind of the peak call times. And we look at that in our strategic plan very specifically, as we'll explain later. But 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So during those times, we're running approximately about 6 calls an hour. And then the third thing is what we refer to as our unit hour utilization. So this is speaking specifically to the time that those crews are on emergency calls. So looking at Station 1, for example, or Rescue 1, we're looking at 27% of the time is that shift period is what they're spending on an actual call. Now, the balance of that time is spent on training, doing fire surveys, inspections, pre-planning, and a number of other options as far as like community and engagement. So that 27%, 26%, 26%, another one right there, 24%. The reason those numbers are important is because the standard, we look at the best practices, look at 30% as being that time at which you have to add an additional unit to maintain availability for the next call. And then the recommendation is 25% is the point at which you start to plan for that additional unit. So we already have 3 that were already above that 25% when this study was done. And now you look at 24% for SQ2, looking at those numbers already, that one now is also above that 25%. So when we look at our overall response and how we look at our operation, we look at that first, our overall objective is look at three things specifically, and that is, one, we want to get the closest unit we can on scene as quickly as possible. The second thing is we want to get advanced life support on that scene as quickly as possible. And the third one is we want to get transport on that scene as quickly as possible. If we can achieve all of those in a single unit, that's great. So by the engine arriving first, having advanced life support capability, and then, which is the paramedics, the ability to defibrillate, the ability to carry the medications, innovation, and advanced level care, and then having the ambulance on scene as quickly as possible to provide that transport. Ambulances, they are that transport, therefore they are out of service longer in order to engage in that transport, where that fire engine can go available as soon as they clear that scene. They're ready for that next call, where the ambulance is the one transporting. So it's about maintaining that service while that unit is transporting out of service, getting that individual to the hospital, getting that pass on, and then back in district. Advanced life support, as we spoke to in the objective, is important. And right now we're running with 11 of our 14 fire engines basically are advanced life support level now. So that means they have EMTs and paramedics. And this goes back to that all hazard response. So the capability is not just fire, it's an all hazard response. So 11 of the 14 are currently advanced life support. This plan brings the balance of them up to advanced life support. So that's having a paramedic, having an EMT, and having the equipment to provide that service. We're also looking at 10 and 12-hour rescues. When I talked about that temporal distribution, that busy time of the day, we're looking at that 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. What we're looking at is bringing on rescues for that peak time of the day. Not bringing on a 24-hour rescue, but bringing on a 12-hour rescue that just addresses that period of time when it's showing that those volumes are there. It also talks about adding an officer to those engines. Again, this is just that effective response force, getting the number of personnel that we need on the scene and doing it in fewer units rather than more units, keeping them available, meeting those NFPA standards, and bringing that staffing up to 3. If you look at the map on your left there, that is basically showing you what our response time is at that 6 minutes. That's what our coverage is from our current station. What we're doing is the 3 stations that we talked about in this proposal is the picture on the right, and it shows you how it changes those response times. And what's highlighted, which is hard to see here, but you'll see the lighter color green, that shows you where those 3 stations are anticipated, where they're being planned. This is a heat map showing those response areas, so the high volume will call, and in there you'll see those yellow stars that represents those same locations that we showed you in the other map, and again, those are those 3 station locations that were referred to. So starting with that first station, that's Station 17. So Station 17 is already a penny sales tax project, and that's how we look to fund the additional stations as well. Not coming out of the MSBU, but rather being that penny sales tax project, looking at other funding options. This one's already in that queue. So what we'd be looking at is the equipment. So we're looking at an engine, a rescue, and the personnel to staff that station. So when we look at that, it's an engine, a rescue, a ladder. We like to plan further down the road, but then we're looking at 3 lieutenants, 6 firefighter EMTs, and 6 paramedics to support both of those units. The next one is Station 18, so this is in the Edgewater area, coverage area. Again, it's a station which we look to cover from a different funding source, sticking to a brand new engine, a rescue, and then the same balance of personnel. And then we have 19, which will be the same thing. This will be in that South Gulf Cove area, the same balance, new engine, new rescue, and then the personnel. Again, the station being funded through different sources. Building the rest of that plan out is Babcock, so that's what it's already in plan now, and we have a station that's being constructed there now that already we have the staffing for, because that's associated with the current staff that's out there now. It's just the new station. Of course, that's in a partnership with Babcock itself. Then we have additional station in 2028 and one in 2031. Again, same balance, an engine, a rescue, and then the personnel to support that. When I talked about the 3 12-hour units, the ones that help us meet that peak time, this is the distribution for them. So we're looking at 3 units that be staffed with, so we'd start with 2 new rescues, and then we'd bring on the 4 paramedics and 4 EMTs, and then a couple years later bring on the next rescue, and then we'd bring on the 3 paramedics and 3 EMTs to staff those as well. showing you the rest of that strategic plan from the perspective of what it would take personnel-wise from a support perspective. You'll see in 2024, what we're looking at is fire inspector, administrative assistant, projects coordinator, training officer, division chief, lieutenants you'll see there, paramedics, and firefighter EMTs. So this is to help support the growth and the responses that are there already. You'll see the additional lieutenants, paramedics, and EMTs. What that's looking at is to help us from the staffing perspective. You heard some of the comments earlier in regard to mandatories. They're working mandatories days that they weren't planning to. This is helping us to cover that and bring down what those total work hours are that they're working. That concludes my part.
Commissioners, looking at the financial side of this, you remember back in March, first want to talk about where the funding comes from. There's been several references to that tonight. We're talking about just the fire in this fire MSBU. So fire services are covered from the MSBU. EMS services are covered from the general fund. And then all of the capital expansion in terms of fire stations, new apparatuses, not replacements, but new apparatuses due to expansion, those all come either from sales tax or impact fees. When we looked at this, we wanted to compare apples to apples because we weren't sure how we fit in with other places. And so we looked at some different locations, Martin County, St. Lucie County, because they're very similar to us in the way that they were built and designed. Sarasota County, our neighbor. We went to look at Lee County. However, Lee County has 16 independent fire districts. So what we did is we took 2 of those that you know, in geographic terms and layout are similar to us. What you'll notice there is the population, the service area population. By service area, I mean, you know, a county only covers that area which isn't covered by an incorporated area. We, of course, only have unincorporated. So 90% of the county is the responsibility of the county. You look at the number of households, and then the total square miles, land miles, water miles. This was made reference to earlier, but if you look at that density, the other organizations about 2 to 3 to even 4 times as much density as what we have here in Charlotte County. And so what we wanted to do is try to do a comparison. Now, the truth is, everyone approaches this differently in terms of how they fund it. So to try to stack it up and compare, we looked at averages across counties and across home prices. So here in Charlotte County, for occupied at that point in time, current rate is $203.77 per occupied lot. Martin County, they do it through an MSTU. The difference there is, rather than charging a flat amount per parcel, they charge an ad valorem base tax that is based on the property value. So if you look at what the average person in Martin County is paying, it's about $1,000 annually for fire service. St. Lucie County, about $810, the average home. Sarasota County, lower. Sarasota has a great deal of density, great deal of, and municipalities, so much lower. And theirs is also very, very different in that they charge based, they have like a split rate, and it's based on a 2,000 square foot home and then on up. So larger homes pay more than smaller homes, but it's a very different structure than what we have here. Lehigh Acres, they are an MSBU, and it's about $324 per unit. And and then North Fort Myers, MSTU, and about $1,000. So we're very much on the low end of that in terms of what our fire rates are compared to comparable counties. If you look at that based on cost per capita and cost per household, again, we're the first section there, so lower than all the other counties except for Sarasota, and again, as referenced earlier, the density that takes place there. So much, much lower in terms of our cost per household and cost per capita. So we try to look at this from different perspectives in terms of comparable rates, but also cost per household, cost for for population. Tried to be very thorough in the way we looked at it. Now, the question often comes up, why we use MSBU's? Why not MSTU's? Well, again, it comes back to the density, so we wanted to be able to demonstrate, what the option would be here. If we move to an MSTU and we base this on ad valorem as opposed to on per parcel basis, and this is the equivalent millage rate that we would need to charge in order to collect the dollars that we're collecting to pay for fire services, would be about 1.4 mils. If you look at the range of options or the ranges of costs that would be, essentially any homeowner whose home was valued at more than $150,000 would be paying more than they're currently paying. So vacant lots obviously would be paying less than what they're currently paying. But for home ownership, anything above $150,000 would be paying more under an MSTU than what they're currently paying under an MSBU. We, of course, took that workshop and looked at long-range projections, 10 years out. I've added a few slides here just to kind of look at this. What this slide is looking at is the last 15 years. The blue bars are the fund balance in the fire fund. And you can see that at one time that fund balance was up as high as $17 million. The numbers above it are the rates that are being charged. So you can see during the recession, the rates were actually reduced twice. So in 2009, they were at $169. 2010, they were lowered to $150. Because of the number of cuts that were made to the fire agency during the early part of the recession, that fund balance began to grow. And again, in 2012, the rates were reduced again to $135. That, of course, we've again seen very quickly that fund balance erode down. By the time we kept those rates flat for the next 4 years. When we got to 2016, clearly it was not sustainable. It was time to do something. At that point in time is when we instituted a 4% annual increase. However, that was not sustainable either. And we knew that as we got down to the farther end of that, and that's flattened out. I want to point out in 2022, that increase in the fund balance is due to the $5 million that we got in CARES funding. If it had not been for that $5 million in CARES funding, we would have had to do this a year or two earlier. That fund balance would be wiped out. So that $5 million in CARES funding actually allowed us to postpone the increases for a year. This is just looking at those rates that was above the bar there. This is just a graphic view of it. The blue are the actual rates that have been charged for fire assessments on an annual basis. The orange bar is adjusted for inflation. So if you look at that adjusted for inflation, those rates have been basically flat over that 15-year period of time. This tells kind of the story. I hear a lot of people talk about the MSBU system, and this kind of tells a little bit of the story of why these increases are needed. If you look at occupied lots, our current rate on the occupied lots is, as I said, 207 or 203. We charge a lower rate for the vacant lots. If you look back at 2009, we had 68,000 occupied lots. We had 182,000 vacant lots. Again, it gets back to that density issue. When you have 3 times as many vacant lots as you do occupied lots, that's just not efficient. And then about 20 million square feet of commercial space. If you look at that in today's units, we now have 83,000 occupied, but only 119 vacant lots, and about 23.5 million commercial square footage. Now, the thing I want you to notice here is if you look at the unit change, you would expect it to be more 1-to-1. If an occupied lot If we increase by an occupied lot, it seems like one vacant lot will come off. However, it's much more complicated than that. Some of these vacant lots were converted to occupied lots. Some of them came off as a result of the ag exemptions. Some of them came off as a result of conservation easements. Lots of different factors can happen. The point of this is, if you look at the fiscal impact of that, if I was charging the same rate today that we were charging back in 2009, we gained $2.6 million on occupied lots coming on. We gained about $600,000 in commercial expansion, but we've lost $4.5 million in terms of vacant lots that have gone off. So we're really in a net loss position from 2009. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear also.
Yes, sir. Hold on a second.
Swampland like that too.
Okay, I'm going to have to take a moment here and ask you to further explain that. I mean, I heard you the first time, but I'm still not really fully understanding. So if you're telling me that 15,000 of the vacant lots turned into occupied lots, I got it. That's 15,000 on the first line up. What happened to the other 40,000, you know, what was that? 48,000 lots we lost. How is that not being recovered either in vacant, in the occupied or commercial? It can't just disappear.
Well, some of it is, again, vacant to occupied, but we've also had ag exemptions, and a lot of those vacant lots came off as a result of being exempted because they're now classified as agricultural property. Conservation easements.
Can you give me, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I really need examples of somebody just took their one lot and said, I'm now going to be a farm. I mean, how does that? Yeah, so let's dive deeper into I want to hear examples of how we went from vacant to ag and how we went from vacant to conservation and some actual large acreage. I mean, I'm sure some of it maybe had to do with scrub jay habitat, stuff like that. So I need to understand that, which means we're almost kind of doing, we need some sort of payment in lieu of taxes kind of situation. So how's that not been worked into this formula? And I hate to throw the HCP under the bus, but was this ever contemplated with the HCP? If we're taking that land off the tax rolls because we have to do it so that folks can develop their scrub jay lots at a lot lower expense, somebody else is paying the tab, evidently, right?
Yes. And I can't account for all 40,000 lots, Commissioner, over 15 years.
Right.
I'm just giving you the broad categories of how these things happen. My main point was that all of the lot transitions have not led to an increase in revenue. That revenue has had to come from increases.
So this is an important slide. I appreciate you putting this in the presentation because I think this speaks to a lot of, that's a huge delta, big difference in revenue. And that has a lot to do with why we're in the position we're in, along with, that's why those rate curves went so far down. You can't just explain it by saying, well, so we went with a 4% per year, yet it went down. How's that even possible? That's how. Okay, thank you.
So we're going to pick up the tab.
So going back to what Chief Fair was presenting in terms of positions coming on, these are the original assumptions that we used in the March workshop for doing our 10-year projections on which the rate increases were recommended. So you can see for 24, and the biggest thing about this, Commissioners, is most of this is up front, and it's in 2024, and that's why the increases needed to be up front. So this is what the original assumptions were, and they're basically just repeats of the slides that Chief Fair had earlier, a little more detail on them. And at that workshop, we brought you 4 options. The first option was continue the 4% annually, and of course we demonstrated that just was not feasible at all. So we looked at 6% annually, and that did not work either. And again, it comes down to the fact that a lot of this growth, the amount of growth that is built up in this county that we have not expanded for, and now expanding for in these first 2 years, requires a higher increase in the first year. And so we looked at 25% in '24 and 5% annually thereafter. We looked at 20% in '24, 6% annually. You proposed that we look at a hybrid, basically for the purpose of setting the first year and then setting a maximum rate. And someone asked earlier how you come to that maximum rate. What we did is we actually just went out at 10 years. We went to fiscal year 31. If we were using that formula, this is what the maximum rate would be. And of course, you would set annual rates each and every year and would take them up at the progress or at the rate that you felt was needed based on what we bring back to you, but we would be setting that maximum rate. We brought back that hybrid that you asked for, and that's the rate that was published, and that's the rate that we talked about at the July MSBU public hearing. Now, this is what the 10-year projection on that increase looks like. So the blue bar is the revenue coming in from those annual increases. The red bar are the expenditures, and the green bar is basically the reserves of the fund balance. And you can see this was sustainable. We heard you loud and clear that you want to spring back options. We looked at a number of options, Commissioner. What we did was primarily we didn't want to impact operations. So we looked at our assumptions, and some of our assumptions we felt were too conservative. So for instance, what we've done here is for the first year, we've assumed that really we're only looking at 3 months of expenditures, because by the time you hire that many people, secure that amount of equipment, get things going, it's going to take 9 months to get this rolling and get this on here. So we only programmed in 3 months for 2024. And then we made a similar assumption in 25, they're now rolling, but the first 3 months of those positions in 25 would not come on for the first 3 months. So that allowed us to reduce something in terms of timing. The other thing that we did was we looked back at our reserve policy. And our reserve policy would indicate about $3 million a year as the minimum threshold. So we tried to maintain that. You're going to see in the second year we don't quite hit, but we don't drop below it too long. So the scenario that we're bringing back to you, is 15% in 24, and then 12% in 25, and then 6% annually thereafter. And again, the reason for the increases up front is if we don't get those increases up front, we're going to erode the fund balance very, very, very quickly. This is what that looks like graphically. You can see, again, the blue line being the revenues, the red lines being expenditures, and that green bar coming, consistently tailing down, basically kind of living on our reserves for a while. Gets well below that $3 million range in 2028, but then quickly comes back up. Now, these are projections. And we all know 5 years from now, it's not going to look exactly like this. So every year, you're going to look at these, you're going to reevaluate, we're going to bring you updated projections, and you can make those judgment calls. But we want to be fiscally responsible and show you long range. If it stays on this trend, this is what it looks like. So fall below our reserve levels, but come back up very, very quickly. So comfortable with that. And that's the recommendation that we're bringing at this time.
Gentlemen, any questions?
Well, I have a comment first more than a question. Okay. So I just want to take this opportunity. There were some things said during public comment. And I just wanted you guys to know I've worked with you for a number of years now. And whether I'm on or off this dais, when I'm talking about government things, I'm always acting in the capacity of the proper decorum that we would have in the chamber, even though it's off the dais. And I heard some comments from the public regarding commissioners not being receptive to these issues. The reason I called Mr. Kalin was because I was taking notes during the last hearing on this, and he had some concerns that concerned me. And I took my notes and I figured, well, I'm going to give Mr. Kalin a call. So I called him up and I said, you said your taxes were going to go up $17,000. And I said, that concerned me. And he also said he line itemed our budget, and it was bloated. So I asked him if he could name a couple line items, we can sit down, go over and talk about it in preparation for the next budget hearing. He said he wasn't feeling well. So I said, no problem. We stopped the phone call, I followed up with an email. This was characterized as demanding and demeaning, and I just want to read it and let the audience decide. Mr. Kalin, as we discussed, you were going to send me a fire fee notice on one of your rented properties. I've been unable to find anything that would cause a $17,000 increase to your rent from the proposed fire rate. You were also going to send me a line item review of our budget and indicate where we were bloated. I look forward to reviewing these matters. Regards, Joe Teseo. I did not hear from him for a week. I followed up another time, professionally. It has been almost a week and have not heard back from you regarding my email below. Our final budget hearings are quickly approaching, so I'll need that information so I can look into the matter. Regards, Joe Teseo. I wasn't demanding anything. That's it in writing. I thought it was very professional. And what I heard from people is that's what they want from their commissioners. Responsiveness. Meet the needs of the people. I literally called the constituent about his concerns, followed up multiple times with emails, you just heard them, and it was characterized as demeaning and harassing the constituent. I just wanted the people to know that's what's in writing. You can decide for yourself. I'm not here to defend myself. But I always act in a professional manner on or off the dais. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of?
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you. I'm just, curious, if you can go back to slide 29, I don't know, fiscal, Babcock, no, the two, right there, 2024, fiscal year 2024. So Babcock Station, 9 positions, 10 hours. So is this box pretty much Babcock? Or is there more than, is this pretty much what we're going to be outlaying for that location?
No, that top line is just Babcock. Remember, the station that's there will be manned by the current manpower, whatever station's out there. But this is for the ladder truck that has been provided. Remember, Babcock is providing the ladder truck, we provide the staffing. So this is essentially 9 positions coupled to that ladder truck.
Right. So I want to talk about, the concept of the growth coming in and just for my own education as well. So that ladder truck, they're paying for because they are collecting those fire impact fees themselves out there, and that's how we have it set up, where they're collecting their fees, but then they are furnishing with those monies everything they have to do. I think, just to get off topic a little bit, the library, they have to pay for the shell, and then we have to pay to put in furniture and the books and staff it and all that other stuff, but that's based on recurring general fund amounts. But as far as the impact fee for creating the public space, in the agreement with them long ago, they said, okay, we're going to take all the money, we'll provide, and here's the list of infrastructure, and this is one of those items on that long list.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm as well, and I think you mentioned it. There was a lot of constituent comments regarding the monies being used to build new firehouses. You mentioned that's coming from other sources, other capital. This is primarily for personnel and some apparatus.
That's correct.
Okay.
Replacement of apparatuses, older apparatuses, but if it's new, it's expansion because of population growth, then it's paid for out of impact fees.
Yeah, because there were comments earlier that, we should have other sources for building firehouses, and we do. And we do charge impact fees for that. I think there was a comment, you should be doing it, we are. There was also a comment about payroll, and I took a deep dive on that. One of the things I discovered is the unscheduled overtime, and that is causing a significant amount of additional funds to be paid, and it would make the salaries look larger than they are, and it's primarily because we don't have the personnel to properly staff and meet a level of standard that I think our residents would expect. So when you add in the unscheduled overtime, in some cases, that can make up 10, 20, 30% of an annual salary. And that's because we don't have the bodies to do that, and that's what the report shows, is that we are good in some categories, but other areas we are below a standard. And if you don't have standards, it becomes very difficult to budget. And what we do, and we try to do it well, is tell each department to establish a standard, bring it back to the board, and we can see if we can work within the framework of those standards. And we had a workshop back in March. I mean, a lot of folks thought we just did a document dump a couple weeks before the last budget meeting. That was not the case. Back in March, we spent a few hours at a workshop that was on TV and live streamed, and we were able to critique the various data reports and forecasting. And then we worked our way to the budget hearing. So we just didn't get this information a few weeks ago. We got it 5 or 6 months ago. And then we moved here, obviously, the budget process to incorporate those findings into the budget. We asked the chief to come back with a standard. We were not meeting national standards for certain response time. And, you know, another gentleman said we should only be concerned with low taxes and infrastructure. I agree with that statement, but he missed a major component. We're charged, and we take an oath of office to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the community. That part was missed. That's very important. That's where this comes into play. Because every minute does count. You know, when you call, especially in our demographic, in our community with our population, if you call, you don't want the ambulance and first responders there yesterday. You want them there within minutes. Unfortunately, where I live, we've had 3 or 4 different occasions over the years to have to call fire EMS. Unfortunately, 2 people passed away, and 1 got to the hospital and was okay. And I got to tell you something. As I sat there on my neighbor, relative passed away, there was nothing sweeter than to hear the sirens coming. I can't tell you what a relief to know help was on the way, because you're helpless at that point. And I got to tell you, every, not minute, every second, you're on pins and needles waiting for that response time. And when I read a report, and I've gone over it, just go to you don't have to read the whole thing, it's very lengthy. Go to the bottom half, like page 320 on. It gives you the recommendations and findings. I found that report to be sound, and I found the chief's plan to be practical in implementing those findings. He would not be doing his job if he did not bring us his operational plan. And we go out and we compare our pay raises, our pay scale to other surrounding communities. We're not the highest, if you look at the study that we did. We're somewhere in the middle. You know, we're not low, we're not high, we're in the middle. So I find that to be a credible study. We do that all the time when we look at different departments on where we should be. But in this instance, I believe we're doing what we're supposed to do as a commission for the health, safety, and welfare of the community. And if you read the report, there are areas where we're 2 times lower than the national standards in turnout time and response time. That's not a good place to be. And we asked the budget director to go out. We forecast this not a year or 2 years. It's good planning. We went out years to look at this. So the shoe doesn't drop and some other future taxpayer gets stuck because we didn't look at this today and take action on it. We try to take a methodical, incremental approach to solving the problem that we know we have. Now, believe me, if the report said we're good and we're on par, we wouldn't be having this discussion. I would be arguing we don't need to do anything. But we're growing. We're growing. And this is part of the growing pains. So we have a choice to make. We can look the other way and not do anything today. There's no statutory requirement that we have to do anything. This is a level of standard that we've adopted that we think is best practices. That's what that report is all about, best practices. So we cannot do anything today when we know we have a problem. That's failure to plan. I mean, that is a failure to plan. And if you don't have a plan, it's a plan to fail. And we can't do that. It would be irresponsible for us to look the other way on this and not address anything. But I also understand what we're going through as a community. I've lived here for 40 years. I've been in the same house for 23 years. You know, I understand what's going on with the economy and everything else. But it doesn't mean we still look the other way. We have to find a balance of where we can do something here and put us on a glide path to where we can properly staff. So that's kind of where I'm at, Mr. Chair. I probably went on too long, but I had a lot I wanted to talk about because there was so much misinformation out there. There was even a constituent who said he looked at the commissioner's tax records and said we pay a different tax rate than them. I mean, I've been living in the same house. I have my homestead exemption, and I'm paying the same tax anybody else would in my situation that lived in the same house the same period of time, had the same homestead exemptions. That one was a doozy, that somehow we're getting a discount on our taxes. That kind of stuff is just misinformation that misleads the public. Just like the $17,000 tax increase. And people were also being told that their total tax bill was going up 25%. And now that the trim notices go out, maybe some people aren't here because they were frustrated, but I think people actually got the trim notice and said, geez, this isn't what I was told it was going to be. And they didn't come tonight. So I just wanted to make those comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman,
Don't vote down.
just want to clarify one.
I'm sorry. I got Commissioner Deutsch, and then I'll come to you.
That's fine.
There were probably about 15 comments individually that I'd like to respond to. So I'll probably give somebody a phone call or run into them and try and let them share some things with them, but I don't know if I'll get accused of anything. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm too big and ugly to worry about that. At any rate, about 3 or 4 weeks ago after church, I stopped into IHOP with a couple of friends before we did a brunch. And we're in there and say, there's 7 or 8 people in there. And I said, how long are we going to have to wait? He says, well, probably about 35, 40 minutes. And I look over and I said, there's about 8 to 10 tables empty in IHOP. This is like 11 o'clock Sunday morning. And I'm ready for a couple of pancakes. They had that special what you could eat. So I'm ready to go in there. And they said, well, we can't get enough people. We can't get enough people to wait on the tables, and we're down to cook, so we're really sorry you have to wait. I'm not going to give you my philosophical comments on the economy and where we're at and why we're here and talk about a whole bunch of those things, but we pride ourselves, and part of the reason we're here, every one of us, we pride ourselves on our first responders, on our sheriff's office, on the firefighters, on the EMTs. And when there's an emergency, we can't say you gotta wait a half hour because we don't have enough people to fill those tables. And this point goes directly to salary, and this is why I want to touch upon it. Our firefighters, if we have someone that calls in sick, if we have someone that we have an accident, if someone is giving birth, if one reason or another we have a firefighter that can't show up, we don't turn around and say, well, you gotta wait another half hour because we can't use those tables. Our employees in the firefighter department don't have a choice. They have what's called mandatory overtime. And there was a day 15 years ago where a lot of them liked the extra overtime. Now they want to spend some more time with family. When we have an emergency, they have to come in. And do they get overtime? They make a little bit more per hour? Absolutely. And the salaries go up. But the important thing is that we have the people that can serve and be there in an emergency. 1 or 2 other real quick things I want to touch upon. Every one of us is being hit with inflation. And as a side note, I went up and I hadn't seen my granddaughter in New England since she was an infant. I don't take a lot of time off. I like to hang around and aggravate everybody in the building, so I don't take a lot of vacation time. And I was in, and I'll get political, in a blue state. I don't think the 2 of us were able to have a lunch for less than $60 because there's a 10, 11% tax on everything. I was flabbergasted when I had a chance to sit down with my 3 boys and find out what they're paying in real estate taxes. We don't know or realize how blessed we are to be here. My house, which is around $3,000, it's an old house, 71, the taxes on that in Rhode Island would be about $9,000 a year. Yeah, their insurance was less. Sure, no question about that. I just had to send my premium in. But we don't realize how lucky we are. And The county is dealing with inflation the same way every one of us does. It blows my mind to pay 79 cents for a pound of bananas when they were 3 for $1, 3 pounds for $1 2 years ago. But the county's being hit on everything. Everything we need and everything we do, we're getting zapped with the inflation too. And I want to, in general, some of the comments and the politically things that seem to have a little bit of appeal to them, and you can make a comment about people getting paid off for doing this or doing that. This board, we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to govern for Charlotte County. And that responsibility doesn't mean that we worry about what's happened yesterday. We've got to have the wisdom and the foresight, and we have to think that we have to plan for tomorrow. Because you don't snap your fingers and things don't happen that fast. I think we've come up with an alternative. I think we absolutely heard what the people had to say. But we do have the responsibility to protect Charlotte County and to protect every one of the citizens that live here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify one thing. Gordon, if you could go to slide 36, you recommended rate scenario. I just wanted to make a statement and get a clarification from you that, after the July public hearing, we all heard the desire to reduce that initial increase. And I remember throwing out some concepts as to what could be looked at. And I believe I was asking for 10% the first year to go up that way. It just doesn't work. The way I understand it, it just will not work. Our reserve levels will get too low, and we're going to be in trouble. So this, in your professional opinion, is the best scenario that we could look at this time with the needs that we have at this time.
Yeah, and Commissioner, we tried to even go 10% the second year. We tried the 10% the first year. In order to do that, we'd have to be like, every year. Yes, this is.
I just wanted the public to understand that this resulting recommendation you went through other iterations to determine that this was the recommended scenario. And we were trying to do even a flatter increase. It just won't work, folks. It's unfortunate, it just won't work. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, yeah, I think I need to hear from the chief, if you could step back up to the microphone. Because I heard Commissioner DeSalle make a really good point that, if we're leading correctly, if there's good stewardship of the county, if we're planning correctly, these are the steps we need to take to keep our services correct so we don't lose lives. How hard is it to hire new positions in the face of the fact that you've got Sarasota County and Lee County, north and south of us, which are arguably better funded and are willing to pay higher salaries? So that's question number one. And then question number two is, we wait 3 years, and all of a sudden, we realize, oh my goodness, we are in dire straits. It's 15 minutes for response times. There's huge public outcry. What's wrong with you people? Why are you letting this happen? So we ask you, Chief, hurry up, ramp up. What's your time frame to make up all that ground? Because you've got to order equipment, you've got to get out there and hire, and now you're fighting against higher salaries. It's just, so I need to understand, the answer to both of those questions.
Certainly, I appreciate the questions. So in regard to hiring personnel, so we're watching this challenge nationwide. We just heard another example in another industry. This is a nationwide problem. And not only that, but as far as public safety goes, and we've seen this in the last few years, and a lot of it's attributed to COVID and some of those items, but we're seeing challenges just in public safety. They're not coming into public safety like they were prior to those events. It's a challenge to get people in the door and then for them to decide that this is a career for them. So we're running into those challenges already. That is a national problem, and it's not just in getting them to our department or to our area, but it's also getting them into the field and in general. Even our education facilities, their censuses are running low compared to where they were traditionally. So yes, that is a consistent problem. We're also looking at onboarding. Once you hire somebody and get them on board, by the time they're trained to the point of being able to release and count as part of your staffing is 4 to 6 months. So, and again, that's looking at a firefighter coming in and training them all on to a paramedic being released on the field to run an ambulance or an ambulance engine. So that's a 6-month turnaround time. As far as the equipment goes, again, we're running into the same issues everybody else is in regard to before we could order an ambulance, we'd order, for example, 2 in a year, and we'd get them in that same year. Now we're looking at 18 months for an ambulance turnaround time just for a building. And we're also looking at those prices go up significantly. I know in a recent board meeting, we talked about just the price of an engine that had gone up significantly. And that's because that type of engine wasn't being made anymore. This was the next iteration they were going to, and there was no option. We had to move in that direction. Our fire engine apparatus, and we gave the example of the Babcock ladder truck. It took a 24-month turnaround time, where before we could see that within a year. So yes, those things are delayed, and you'll see that's why this is front-loaded the way it is. And the harsh reality right now is that yes, in many aspects we are playing catch-up. We are trying to build and come back at these things, looking at our response times. That in the last 5 years, we've added 1 ambulance. But in the last 5 years, we showed you an 18% increase across the board with almost 20% in just the EMS alone.
And to that point, I mean, about, I guess, 8 years ago, or maybe longer, 10 years ago, a few chiefs before you came forward and talked to us about Condition Red and, said, well, we really could use another ambulance. We hope we can get that, in the next budget. And our question to the chief was, well, do you need it now? And he said, yes, we do. And we turned to the administrator, who was Ray Sandrak at the time, and we said, Ray, how do we get this done? Because if we're having response time issues, you can't follow a budget cycle. We've got to make sure that we keep the people safe. One other point I want to make up, and I hope you back me on this, but 30 years ago, the department was hiring baby boomers, like myself, who work. They pick a career, they stay in that career, they work their way up the ladder, they gain knowledge, and they are part of that unit, and they grow with the fire EMS family. You're hiring millennials now, and even Gen Zs or whatever the next one is. Those folks haven't quite decided what they want to do with their lives. In fact, they'll do something for 3 or 4 years and then they're gone. They're painting houses, then they're gone, then they're a charter captain. So this is a big problem, and I really don't think folks fully understand. It's within our whole system that when we see the budget slides next, we have positions in the budget that don't get filled, and it's because we just can't find folks, and we can't afford to pay any more than whatever that salary range is. So, can you speak to that? Are you seeing more turnover at the more junior levels?
Absolutely, we are. And at the time when you would join the department because it was hometown, it was something that you wanted to be a part of. You grew up exposed to it. The generations that would jump on, they wanted to be part of that. It was something greater than themselves. That is not what's bringing the generation to us now. And it's for a number of reasons, whether it's just the passion for the job itself or versus just, hey, I'll take this now, but if something comes up better, I'll go take that. But there's also challenges from the perspective of residential, for that, for us to be able to hire people in our area who we know are going to be here, there's not a lot. And so they're coming in from outside of our county. And if a job comes up that's closer to home because they can't afford to move anywhere, then that creates a challenge. And it's one of those things that leads to whether they stay or not.
Chief, thank you. Thank you for your service. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other points on this session? Okay, we're moving forward.
Commissioners, I'm going to turn over to Johnny Elias to talk about the West County School Program.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, John Elias, Public Works Director. In July, at the public hearing where we were discussing raising the West Charlotte Stormwater MSBU rate from its current rate to $125 per acre, we received a lot of public input at that meeting. Board give us direction to try to refine that number. We brought that back to you in August, and what I'm presenting is the same thing that we presented in August. So we broke it down here. I should also point out, that my staff will not be happy if I don't, the rate that we're talking about is per acre. We've also, in this, per the feedback that we got at the public hearing, we've also broken out what it is per average 80-foot lot. So if you look at the slide, you'll see the 80-foot lot is out on the end. We broke it down per line item, and essentially what we were able to reduce the rate by refining some numbers. We've also subsequently met with the West County Stormwater Unit. My team indicated that they still kind of wanted to keep some of the testing rates higher, but we've indicated that the board had given us direction to lower them rates. So what we've done is we've lowered the One Charlotte, One Water funding from $125,000 to $97,108, which was the original ask, and we've deferred the canal sediment removal. So what we're proposing is to the new rate would be $103.10. What we would also recommend is you could make the max rate $125, and we would only do the $103. And then if we bring the canal sediment program back at some point, which would be our intent, we could bump that up, or we could do it however you all direct us to do it. But taking those numbers and laying them out to the 80-foot lot, the total rate would be $31.25 previously, and that lowers it to $25.77. Those reductions that we did.
So, Mr. Elias, did the MSBU board indicate that they would be okay with that option, and then later on, if they decide they need more funding, they would, is that the reason we would go ahead and do the 125?
Yes.
Okay. Appreciate that. Anybody else have any questions?
Chair, one quick question. Somebody had mentioned that they felt they were wondering if they were getting charged differently if they had a corner lot versus any other lot.
So I think in that rate, we wouldn't be talking about a stormwater, we would be talking about a street drainage unit. And our street drainage methodology is based on front footage, so you might be potentially paying more because you have more front footage.
Okay, so it's for that particular item, stormwater, but not for fire, it depends on what you're charging for, because that particular one, any of them that would charge for frontage, you have two frontages because you're a corner lot. Two on the street.
So to clarify, just to not confuse these issues, I have nothing to do with fire. I don't know the methodology. They've explained all that. The stormwater unit that we're talking about is per acre, but the question it did bring up to your point, Commissioner, was what I suspect is for a street and drainage unit, and they do potentially pay higher because the methodology for street and drainage is front footage.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none, we'll go to the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak during this portion of the meeting, come forward. State your name for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes.
Do you have cards? Do you have cards?
Just go ahead and come up.
Well, let me get them there in the hallway.
No, you come up, state your name. That's fine. We'll get you.
5 minutes?
You have 5 minutes for the public hearing. Yes, ma'am.
Sweet. Precedent.
Pull that down.
Pull it down.
Precedent. Since we had comments that were not relevant to the fire, the emergency response charges, and we talk about stormwater, I'm going to overlap both topics a little more since I didn't have a full 5 minutes last time, according to precedent. All right. I would like to say this. In the current and future unstable economy, long-range projections are not reliable predictors of future performance. I would also like to say selective community comparisons chosen were quite curious because I did extensive research about what the response times are in combination with our EMS and our fire, and we exceed standards. We exceed the times per mile, per individual, county per county. That's like year over year. You can't get any more accurate than that. Also, I want to congratulate again our fire and EMS staff for the wonderful job they're doing. Again, also, I would like to state that I would like, before I run out of time, I want all this tabled. I want the MSBU tabled. I want to say that. I want to say we don't need $3,000 padding the coffers at this time, sell the firehouses, and then recalculate and see where your funding is. Take out the damn bicycle paths that were put in line with the United Nations 2021. Make emergency lanes for the poor first responders who have to go through and fight traffic on Tamiami Trail. Take out the stupid bicycle paths and make emergency paths. Start using some creative thinking. We're in new times here. We're in very challenging times. And again, I say, past performance is not an indicator of future outcomes. We have to start putting on new hats, thinking creatively, doing new things, tapping into the resources of the community, responding to the community. What else is there? I'm so upset. I'm a proponent of Jesus Christ. And I don't want anybody who does not live to his standards to talk about church, because church is synonymous with what he said. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. So keep church out of it in the public forum if you're not going to honor him in your private life. As far as, I don't know what else, I am so upset with this because this is set according to old models, old thinking. Old ways. There's so much more that can be done. There's so much more creativity. And yes, I would like people to look at the generation coming up. We don't understand what's coming up. I fully understand what's coming up. I understand what's going on in the colleges. I understand what's going on in the schools. I fought in the state of New York for years. I went and I sat on the Commissioner Sobel, Commissioner of Education. I was the parent representative for the state of New York. I know exactly what's going on. And I know with creative thinking, I was able to sit back for 10 years, the education program in the state of New York, because they based on consensus-based decision makings, and I would not consent to most of their planning. You can do that. I have confidence in you. I have heard you speak. But I've heard the people speak too, and the people can't afford it. Do you know that I've only been here a couple of years, and I'm paying 80% of what I'm paying on my mortgage goes to the new FEMA redistricting. It goes to insurance. It goes to the taxes. I'm looking at land in Missouri. I would have been an asset here. I would have been an asset to all of you. I've got some experiences in my life that have set your hair on fire. But I don't know that I can afford to stay here. I'm asking you people, table this MSBU business. Look again. And also I want to say that the people who are living in the rural districts are the ones who are increasing the response times. They are the more capable people who know how to put out a fire, and they have an expectation of a longer response time, and if they didn't want it, they wouldn't move there. Come on, people, let's think. Thank you very much.
State your name for the record.
Sharon Pinio.
Thank you.
Hi, Kat Pellegrino. Let me start saying, I've been going to commissioner meetings, I don't know, for 3 years. Walton County, now here, this is my home. I served my country 23 plus years in the military. Integrity is doing the right thing all the time, even when no one is looking. That's what I was taught growing up. That's what was impressed upon me while I was in the military. We, the people of Charlotte County, feel that you, the commissioners, do not hear us. The meetings are not convenient for us. The way they are conducted is frustrating at best. When we ask a question, we don't get an answer right away. It's supposed to be civil discourse. We should automatically get an answer from you, not wait till the end, or never hear from you, or have us speak before the actual meeting with our questions. It's ridiculous. We have a bloated budget. You guys could cut your salaries, these high-paying salaries. The internet is amazing because everything's on the internet, and if you know your way around a computer, you can find out all kinds of things. And I think y'all know that. So why not cut some of these salaries? That would help out, because you know what's coming in the next 18 months? We haven't even hit a recession yet. Like I said, I'm retired military. I have contacts. I have network people. They're telling me what's coming. I have people at the border. I have people overseas. You don't know what's coming. But you better open your eyes and listen to we the people, because we vote you in office. And I'm going to tell you right now, we are actively looking to find candidates to run. We are tired of it. We're not going to take it lying down. So, that said, why don't you just look at your budget, table this like she said, go back to the drawing board. There's other avenues. Use them. Stop screwing over the people with fixed incomes. You're pushing them out of their homes. That's not right, and it's not godly at all. So if you call yourself a Christian, I don't think so.
Hi, my name is John Hoos. My wife and I here moved here recently, just in time for a hurricane, I guess, which has been great. So,
We can't hear you.
sorry.
There you go.
Anyway, we just got here in time for a hurricane. So, all of our stuff, we're fixed income, and we have gotten hit by a huge increase in our insurance, of course, trying to find a second one. We've been fighting our insurance for, it's coming up on a year now, plus the deductible that we have to pay for that. Plus, we've had to go to a public adjuster, and that's been an extra couple thousand there. Plus other things that they're not paying for that I've had to repair myself now. So, on top of all of that now, things are getting hard, of course, across the board. Fuel, food, anything to do with that. So, it's pretty hard to take on these things. I did notice in your presentations, I would like to find, you poked at, Constance, at a point of what happened to those lots. And I think it's a really good thing to go back and look at that and see what has happened to that revenue. Because you pointed out that, some went to here, some went to there. Where did it go? That is a huge chunk of money as you're representing it right now to these people as to, hey, we've lost this revenue. Where did it go? And why did it go? And you're finding out this now. That's a bad backstep in my mind, looking at that. The other thing is you look at your budget that you're proposing to do for this, and okay, maybe it is the fact that you're having to catch up. These are terrible times in terms of staffing across the board. Several people that we know have moved out of the medical industry, nurses and so forth, couldn't stand it with COVID, left that industry. So getting people to come into it is very difficult. Understand that. So, but at this point, when you look at that budget and you proposed right now, I believe it's 15% down to 12%, and then 6% per year. You calculate that out, that's 100% increase over that period of time. You've doubled your budget in that period of time. Look at the numbers, it's really straightforward. It's doubled. I would love to have that in any one of my investments that I've tried to make in 10 years to double my money. That doesn't seem quite proportionately correct. Now, maybe something went wrong that you're having to recover from, but it doesn't sound like it in the time frames that you're looking at in terms of response times and so forth. It doesn't seem to add up. So I look at it in that respect as you're asking for, in that period of time, 100% increase in budget over that period of time. Or what are you recovering from? What happened that required that much input from your community? Some things go wrong. I understand that. But what went wrong in this case? It doesn't sound like there's a problem that requires that much influx of funds from your community at the point where you're now at 200%, doubled your budget in that period of time. Hopefully I've done my math right, but I believe I have. So anyway, I'd really like to hear from you because you poked at that. I think it's a really good point as to where did that revenue go and why did it leave this place? And right now, there's the growth factors, and that's what I haven't seen at any point in here tonight, is the growth factors. We saw the number of response time, but what is the growth factor for this? What are the projections for it? I haven't seen something that corresponds to this is your growth in this community in support of your taxes, revenues, etc., that match that for your response, etc. So anyway, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Cancard. Bear with me while I kind of go through a checklist. I agree with the sentiment that was mentioned about the properties, how they're being reduced. This is kind of a rhetorical question because I genuinely don't know the answer. And I'm thinking about the last meeting when they were talking about how people were combining lots for, I believe, agriculture and also residential areas when you have like your neighboring lots, and that people were still paying for those lots before they were merged together. So I would think all these ag lands that are being merged together would still be in the original zone form before the exemption. I just want to put that out there and see if anyone else might follow up on that in the future. I like the idea of the overtime. That was kind of one of my proposed solutions for this part of my speech, was that I was thinking that the overtime hours obviously are paying a more than one rate, and then if you have a new firefighter, it's probably a lower rate because they're a newer, less seasoned person. That's a really good cost reduction option. I think that was a good idea, and I like the idea of that, but why not a long time ago? Yeah, anticipation is my concern. I'm also worried about the future. In order to keep up with this rapid, some double digit on 3 category, at least under tax bill, the fire SBU to 25, and there's a couple others that are really large, where the others are, I believe, back to 2021 levels, if I recall, the millage rate. It seems like there's a problem there where, what if we have a huge revenue shortfall? What are you going to have to do to the millage rate when you have a recession? Because it's coming. Like, there's no way we can escape this now, I think. So what are we going to do when we haven't been anticipating for the future? If you're having a 25% hike, where did that hole come from? I saw the presentation and I kind of grasped it, but it seemed like we've had a revenue boom to Charlotte County because you have all these new people that are not homestead, not safer homes, highest home costs. Yep. So you're getting these high revenues coming in. Yep. You should have had the biggest budget and the biggest savings last year, which is what I said a year ago, because you're not going to have the same one this year, which there is, and next year is going to be a lot lower. So that's my anticipation. So we'll see. I was right last year. So anyway, whatever the case may be, I think we need to consider what's going to be happening in the future there. Anticipation, I think, might be a problem. If we're recovering double-digit percents on multiple categories, there has to be something wrong. There has to be some way that we can anticipate better and even the trajectory better. Let's see here. So we had the biggest inflation. Yes, we had inflation costs, but the biggest inflation was in house prices. There are unrealized gains for the homeowner, but there are realized gains for the county because of your revenue increase being taken annually. Last thing here. I want to say I was in that place when we were waiting outside in the hall, and I spoke last. I think you remember. I was talking to people the whole time. They were mad about the 25% tax hike, and they were anticipating potential things. I never heard one person, and I talked to at least 100, will say, I never heard one person say that they thought the whole thing was 25%, but they did think that it was likely there would be other big increases, and there are, percentage-wise. There's at least 3 double-digit. I'm not trying to be rude about this, but I don't want to be compared to failed states. People fled, and that's when we should anticipate. We have an influx of people, influx of money, we have these house prices going up, that's a revenue boon for the government. Of course, there's a negative part, because the inflation also is eating part of that, but the biggest inflation was in the unrealized gains of the people paying the higher taxes that they haven't realized yet. So that's important to realize. And yeah, so please don't compare us to failed states. We gotta do better. We gotta do better than us, no less. Better than New Jersey. No thanks. Or Illinois, I'm from Illinois. I'm not trying to be mean to New Jersey, believe me, Illinois. Okay. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. I also want to say before I go, because I didn't say this, I appreciate people doing their job. It's not about that. I think there's some things that that we have to look at how it appears, and then how we go forward in a more gradual, transparent, equitable fashion, where people are not going to be looking and saying, what is going on here? Well, why is there not transparency? Why are these deals or arrangements? It might not even be corrupt between individuals. It's like they're naturally, systemically problematic. So I think we need to contemplate that as well, and I appreciate the time, and thank you.
Good afternoon. Just a question, I don't know if anyone will answer, but the first hearing was an MSBU public hearing. I don't know if I'm correct. How come that was 3 minutes instead of 5, if anyone can explain toward the end? I don't understand that at all. This isn't about really overtime, although the guy that got paid the highest is about 60 years old, and I noticed Matt just made a comment that was very intelligent, that if they're going to pay overtime, they might want to give it to people that are newer instead of the oldest ones there getting ready to retire, because that's probably why he got paid so much. This is about bloated salaries. There's over probably $1 million of salaries and benefits sitting at this front table. Salaries are bloated. Again, I'm going to start off where I started before. Government bureaucrats and politicians conspire against us with false competition between counties. You keep saying, no, other counties, the other counties. Politicians that say they have to spend more than other counties with over-the-top salaries, or we're going to lose employees or can't get them. While the other county politicians are saying the same thing about us. Look at them, they pay more, so we got to pay more. It's just a circle. And we have the Florida Association of Counties. It's almost all the commissioners. They can get together and stop this competition and set a reasonable pay. These guys do a good job. I understand they probably work hard, but they also sleep a third of the time. So, you know, $50,000, $55,000 is fine, but there has to be a max on the raises. There has to be a max on this payroll, and it isn't just the firefighters, it's the payroll all across the board. Have any of the commissioners involved in this association of counties spoken up for an end to this vicious circle of salary competition between counties? Are they beholden to the public unions? Are they just meeting and laughing at the peasants while promoting this salary competition? Is this the professional wrestling of politics? Government used to compete against the marketplace, meaning companies, until it mysteriously changed, and now it competes against other counties. The truth is, once they blew past those average salaries long ago, they invented competing against other counties or we'll lose employees. If all the counties in Florida didn't compete with high salaries, would our public employees all leave the state? I don't think so. Or would other states follow suit under pressure from their own voters and taxpayers and get the salaries at least down even with the public sector and the benefits? This salary competition is a deliberate scheme, a planned deception to fleece the taxpayers, nothing less. Taxpayers in other states are realizing the future has arrived. The Wall Street Journal reports that state and local governments in the U.S. currently have $3.5 trillion in unfunded pension liabilities. Politicians must raise taxes dramatically to fund this. Why? And we're going on the same path. We're staying on the same path. It's unsustainable. It's not that the collection of taxes is unsustainable, it's the pay is unsustainable. And stop saying it's only a $51 increase or a $50 here or the price of a cup of coffee, because that's on top of the $200 here, the $300 here, and all the other MSBUs and taxes. I don't pay a lot of taxes, but I care about people that do. Try the little word game tricks with little kids that don't understand, because we do. And everyone that's out there, remember, there's nobody left, I guess, and that's terrible. This first meeting and this meeting is so disappointing. 3 of these tax and spend commissioners are running for office in less than a year. Please vote appropriately when you vote. Thank you all for listening to me, though.
Keep it brief, gentlemen. Rick Callen, Trumbull County resident. This is the notice I received from your board about the taxes. It says from last year, I'm going from $203.77 for my home for my fire tax to $764.13. That's a pretty substantial increase, only to find out The notice you sent to me was done incorrect. I now have my trim notice with the new potential proposed rate. It's a little more in line and reasonable. It's the $254 that you're proposing. How many other folks got the same notice in the mail that they were looking at that significant of an increase and came to the last meeting very upset? You guys are in charge of that. Sending out the correct information is important because you can diffuse it before it starts. Second, Commissioner Constance, you asked where a lot of these properties went. I would implore you to go to yesterday's code enforcement hearing and watch it. A gentleman purchased a piece of property from this county, not through tax sale, but a direct purchase, and was not notified when he bought it as a building lot. It had been turned into conservation by the county for the scrub jay habitats to accomplish the removal of scrub jays from other adjacent properties in other areas. So you now have an irate resident, and I will tell you, he was extremely animated, and your code enforcement hearing officer did not help diffuse the situation, only escalated it. They were arguing over a nuance, a timing issue that one wanted to argue when it was not. The situation here is though the county created an unbuildable lot, didn't tell the buyer, and when I heard the representing attorney from the county stand up and say, and it is recorded, do your due diligence, buyer beware. You guys have an obligation to the public. If you're going to sell us a bill of goods, make sure it's a good bill of goods. That was appalling to watch. On another note, I would encourage you to watch the August 2nd code enforcement hearing. The number of people that are homeless right now because of the financial situation has not only been exacerbated by Hurricane Ian, so many people still homeless. I know we all want to pretend they don't exist, that the campers don't exist. Let's create a task force to get them off of properties. These are problem people. These are people that don't have homes. These are people that, many of them don't have resources. We have to have some compassion here. I would implore this board, put a little bit of rights back to the people's property. You give that back to us, we're probably not going to be as pissed off paying a little more in taxes. That's all I got.
Anyone else wish to speak? Anyone else wish to speak? Please come forward.
David Grossman, I'm sure you remember me earlier, I want to address not so much your inability or your taxation, but your revenue sourcing. Because what we found in examining your budgets don't seem to comport with the emotional pleas to tugging the heartstrings of what you all expressed here and with your union and your fire department. They're very necessary. Unfortunately, your impact study of 2021 and your study of from Fitch and Fitch don't support it. Your response times are at normal. They are good. You only need one extra fire department or fire station, and that only reduces your response time by 2%. You're hitting your metrics. You don't need the money. But let's assume all your emotional pleas are accurate. Where is your revenue sources? Now, you have major expansion in the county. It's called Allegiant Travel Company. They are one of your largest developers at this point. They are having expansion to Punta Gorda Airport. Punta Gorda Airport has an economic impact, their published document, of $1.7 billion for last year. They're operating at a 29% margin increase, and they expect those profits and revenues to go higher, partially because of Allegiant, because Allegiant is building a new expansion of a terminal over there. But that's not the only thing Allegiant Travel owns. They're also doing the Sunseeker Resort. Now, the Sunseeker Resort was an interesting project because it required this commission to enter an agreement in 2018 that developed the impact statement. Now, you all signed off on your financial disclosure documents that you took training and would become the commissioners, and that training included something called the Impact Statement Handbook. And you were all given this by reference, and it's something that is required when you develop your impact analysis. In that says, and in your impact study of 2021, it says the capital improvements for fire stations will come from impact funds. Impact funds are necessary, so you look to those new developments to do that. Allegiant Travel is one of that with the Sunseeker, but that's not their only development property. There's actually two others. There's the golf course that they own, and there's the corporate headquarters they're building at Lake Susie. These are all four major developments that should be considered in the impact revenue stream. Now, what's important about that is the Sunseeker Resort is touted to have about 900 units, condominiums and hotel rooms. Condominiums are generally taxed at a higher rate than hotel rooms because hotel and motel rooms have an ability to generate room tax. Now, what we had, though, was a change in the definition of what constitutes a motel room. Now, this change this board considered, and it was so novel that one current commissioner said, and it was quoted as saying, I wasn't briefed on how the zoning designation change from condominium to motel room would affect impact fee revenues. However, this commissioner expressed confidence in the expertise of the county staff to what was appropriate. Well, that expertise might have been misplaced because county impact fees change from thousands of dollars per unit to hundreds of dollars per unit. Now, one may wonder why you would do that. What's the benefit to the county for that? Well, I had to look into who actually owns Allegiant Travel. Allegiant Travel is diversified into multiple investment portfolio groups. Okay? You might recognize some of these. BlackRock, Morgan Stanley, Invesco, Nuveen, TD Asset Management, Fidelity, Raymond James. These are all owners of Allegiant. Allegiant is currently trading at about $89, but they're projected, once Sunseeker goes online, to go up to 120 to 130. So anybody that's holding a stock portfolio that has any of those investment firms stands to make a lot of money when this stock goes up. Now, I was able to get the financial disclosures from all 5 commissioners here. And in those financial disclosures, it determines 4 of the 5 have holdings.
Sorry, your time's up.
Wow.
I'll leave those holdings. I have those documents for anybody that's interested.
And they're public record.
Thank you, sir.
Interesting.
My name is William Smith. I'd like to speak on what is a public safety issue in regards to animal control and the fact that the county has no county shelter to properly care for the animals that we have to have taken care of. Animal Welfare League entered into a contract years ago, and approximately 10 years ago there was a hearing when the county wanted to do away with that contract, and if any of you were here, you recognize that there was an overflow crowd at that hearing. So I believe they went into a year-to-year contract that rolled over with small increases each year. So it costs the county right now about $30,000 a month for all of their animal services, which means basically every animal, because by contract we have to take every animal in that the county brings in. We also have to, we don't have to, but we do take in animals from the city of Punta Gorda because they have no animal service and have no shelter services.
I work with and travel with the Humane Society and with the ASPCA, and I've seen a lot of times what are called hoarding, what are called puppy mills. I know that the people that run the shelter will tell you that everything is okay there, that all shelters are overcrowded, and they are. But all shelters don't have to take in everything that's dropped off if they do it like we do. What you have right now is basically warehousing of animals. We have more animals right now in collapsible kennels on the floor than we actually have in regular kennels. Shelter was designed for 31 dogs. We have over twice as many in our one adoption building, an equal number in the intake building. There are stacked on top of each other. The county has to come to the realization that it has to build a county shelter. No one from the county came after Ian to see if we had emergency power, food, water, see if we could clear the grounds of trees that were down. There was no need to because we're not considered a county shelter. So really, it wasn't your responsibility for any of those things. It was a responsibility of the volunteers. It was a responsibility of the people that worked at the shelter. The difference is, other counties, when they have a problem, the county commissioners step up and realize there's a problem and do something about it. When Babcock Ranch builds out more, when Westport builds out more, when the city of Punta Gorda has more people coming to it, this problem is going to get worse. We can tout ourselves on being a no-kill shelter, but we have animals that are tearing apart their kennels because nobody is walking them. They're spending 23 plus hours a day in kennels. You may have 2 volunteers coming to take care of 70 animals that are on the floor. That means those animals get to go outside, pee and poop. That's it. If that was a condition that you found in any kind of hoarding or puppy mill, they would close it down. It's a terrible situation. It has to be addressed. It can't be ignored any longer. It is never going to get better. That train left the station for the Animal Welfare League to be able to take care of the needs of Charlotte County. It's changed a lot in 60 years. I love animals. I've devoted the last 12 years of my life to traveling around with all the organizations.
Comments earlier about how great it was to be here, and not up in, I think you referenced the blue state, where your kids are paying, I think, triple about for property taxes, to what you had mentioned. We moved here, bought our house 2 years ago. The time we purchased, property values and demand for housing was great. There were bidding wars going on. There were very few properties on the market. We ended up buying a 1981 1,565 square foot house because that's all that was available that was decent that we wanted to live in. The previous residents claimed that their property taxes were in the $3,500 range. We got a supplemental bill after we bought the house that jumped it up to almost $6,500. That was in September of 21. Last year, 2022 property taxes, our tax bill was $11,700. And this year, the proposal is about the same unless don't increase it, in which it's something over 10,000 or a 40-year-old 1,500 square foot house. That is outrageous and it's absurd. According to what I have read, the growth in property taxes in this county from 2012 to 2023 is 97.6%. They have virtually doubled in 10 years. However, my taxes went up 70-some%.
in 1 year. It's unconscionable. I don't understand the millage rates, which put Charlotte County at something like 20% above Sarasota County, about 14% above Lee County. For our relatively sleepy little community, it doesn't make any sense. Things are just out of control and budgets have to be reined in. I appreciate our fire, I appreciate our police, I appreciate the services that we have. But we can't just continue in every regard to continue to raise taxes. It's just, A, it's not right. B, it is an imposition on people who move here. You have new homes that are going in that are upping your revenue source. Practically every lot I've seen that's being built on is being snapped up as soon as it's completed. So yeah, you do have opportunities to raise tax base, but this shouldn't be the kind of community that's going to drive people away because they don't want to or can't afford to live in a little house in a lovely community. It's just not right. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate the ability to speak here, and I hope you rein it in. It needs to be reined in. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
And my name's David Kalen Sr. I'm going to pick up where I left off. Seniors afforded a little more time. And most people are probably aware of these numbers, but it's the federal government that drives our economy for the nation. We're very dependent upon interaction with other nations. We're headed towards $33 trillion in debt. That's known debt. The unfunded mandates combined with that takes us over $200 trillion. Everett Dirksen one time said a few billion here, a few billion there, pretty soon it's a lot of money. A trillion is 1,000 billion. To give you a stack of $1 trillion, let me ask you to count that. Want to take a guess how long it would take to count 1 trillion? 33,000 years. Unimaginable funds. If we take a look at the Federal Reserve, which is nothing federal about it, it's international bankers running it. There's nothing reserved. They have two choices in front of them. They box themselves in, either hyperinflation or hyperdeflation. It's coming. There's no stopping it. Pick your choice. What's going to do to this nation is incomprehensible. We've never lived it before. I don't disagree with increases in salaries and the great folks that do the EMS and our great police and the rest of them. I think timing's the issue right now. Hold off just a little bit. We're all going to have to pull the belt in, everybody. But right now, if you're to implement this and then 6 months down the road we have already hit the brick wall, what are you going to do then? We take a look at it. U.S. banks are collapsing. Yeah, we got through Silicon Valley Bank and the rest, which sucked up everything out of the FDIC. People think their money's insured in the banks. 1.3% of deposits that are covered by the FDIC is all they had, and that was eaten up. Who's going to bail them out? We have over 200 banks right now that are determined to be insolvent and ready to crater within the next several months. BlackRock and the rest, I've heard that name mentioned, are pulling their investments out of the United States because they know it's coming. U.S. banks hold $1.8 trillion in unrealized losses out of a total of $2.2 trillion deposits. That's because they invested in federal notes that have gone inverted. And now they got to cash in that money in order to get the depositors, well, the investors. They're not depositors anymore due to Dodd-Frank. The bank can take their money. Most people don't realize that, what Dodd-Frank did. I was in the financial industry at the time when that occurred. It was rather interesting reading. It was a shell of legislation passed, the bureaucrats filled. If we take a look at it, speaking of the Federal Reserve, if you haven't read the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, put out by Edward Gordon, great read to tell you what the Federal Reserve really is and what their plan is for us. I think looking at where we are as a nation and how foolish we've been with our spending and financing, I think most of what I see with Charlotte County has not followed that. But you're on the cusp that you could. Reassess, please. Protect the constituents you have. Protect the county. We've got to take care of our county employees. I agree with that 100%. But right now, timing is critical. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak? Gentlemen?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, I need to close the public hearing. Mr. Chair, I see no one else rising to close the public hearing. Motion second to close. Any opposition? Hearing none, passes unanimously. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to, thanks, Chair. One of the things about setting the rates today, it puts us on a glide path. Nothing prohibits the board, should things change next year, we can readdress the rate structure. So if some of the things that I'm hearing about the future of the economy come to be true, obviously we can make those adjustments. Just because we vote on it today doesn't mean next year, we reassess the budget annually. So it can be adjusted or eliminated. Whatever the conditions require us to do, we would address it at that point. There were some comments about our firefighters spending a third of their time sleeping and they're not running into fires all day. You haven't been to Fire Station 1, and I got to tell you something. Anybody can Google this. And this probably isn't going to help recruitment of our firefighters. Suicide rates higher than the national average. Mental health higher than the national average. Anxiety higher than the national average. Divorce rate higher than the national average. It is a demanding job. You go on to scenes that none of us want to go see. And they deal with it every day. And, I'm just saying, to diminish what they do, saying they just sleep a third of the time, is a disservice to their profession. And they can't say anything, but I can. That just needs to be said. They're part of our workforce. And, frankly, I find that kind of insulting. But everybody's entitled to have their free speech, and I respect that. In terms of Sunseeker, and I've talked about this often, and there's a myth out there that somehow we approved the rezoning for Sunseeker. That was a community redevelopment area approved over 30 years ago. I think it was in 1992. It was a blighted area, and certain zoning allowances were put within the CRA to help encourage redevelopment. Sunseeker is a poster child for redevelopment in Charlotte County. What is CRA supposed to do? Increase the tax base, get rid of the blight. Everything they've done is by right. They did not come to the board for approvals or financial assistance. They actually went to each owner individually and offered them top dollar to willing sellers. I found out about Sunseeker after they closed on 99% of the property, and then I had an appointment to talk to one of the principals to say, we're Sunseeker, we just bought a bunch of property in Charlotte Harbor. I didn't know about it until after the fact, because that's how the free market works. They don't have to come to the commission and ask for permission to buy property from people. So there was no eminent domain, there was no taking, we didn't give them any parkland, we gave them nothing. And I keep hearing the Sunseeker question that somehow we're benefiting from Sunseeker. We didn't give them any approvals to do what they're doing. So that's another myth that's out there. It's frustrating, but we need to continue to give the information, the correct information as we know it, and try to stop some of that. Now, I have a question for Gordon. And just to reconfirm, there's been a lot of question on the future growth of Charlotte County and the new homes being put on the tax roll. Was that taken into account with your projections going forward?
Yes, and that's what I was trying to show on some of your slides. Fire is not funded based on ad valorem, on property value. It's based on a per parcel basis. So as properties are developed, they come off vacant, they become occupied, there is an increase, but it's only about $100 increase, a little over $100 increase between a vacant property and an occupied property. And that's also what I was trying to show on the other slide where if we convert it to an MSTU so that you pay based on the growth that we're seeing, anyone who had a home valued at more than $150,000 would be paying more, and in some cases much, much more obviously than what the current per parcel rate is.
Yeah, there was a gentleman who spoke about his taxes going up. I don't know if he's still here. What happens is when you look at a homeowner who had his property homesteaded for a period of time, he's locked in because of Save Our Homes. When you buy a new house, your sales price becomes public record based on the dock stamps you pay on the deed. And the property appraiser picks that up, and you reset the market. So if somebody was paying on a homestead property based on $100,000 assessed property, you buy it for $500,000, guess what? You're paying taxes now on the $500,000. That's the way it's always been. That's nothing new. So the new homeowners coming in buying those properties, reset it. You can't look at what the old homeowner paid on a homesteaded property. And I've had a lot of people come to me with that issue because there's people buying this and they're seeing, last year and they're seeing it on their tax records this year, and they're shocked. It's not because we raised taxes. We actually lowered the millage rate last year and kept it reduced this year because we looked at our needs, and the needs didn't require us to have the millage rate we had at the time. So we lowered it, and we kept it low this year, saving the taxpayers well over $10 million between the 2 years. As far as Sunseeker, there was a comment that you can get more money from Sunseeker in taxes if they were condos. Yeah, the original concept was condos, but they decided that wasn't where they wanted to be, and they made a private business decision to go to a hotel concept. And it's true, hotels pay less in impact fees than condos. And so I'm just saying, we don't, again, going back to my original comment, we don't control what Sunseeker does. That's a private, individual, free market system. If they decided that was a better business model for them, that's what they did. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's one other MSBU that has an increase, a significant increase, and we had some testimony this evening we did on July the 17th. That's Suncoast Waterway. And the current resolution, Table 1, shows what we discussed at July the 17th, raising it from its current $738.07 to $1,525. We had testimony on the 17th from Ms. Brogan. This evening we had Mr. Clark and Mr. Ferguson. All those individuals, including Mr. Brownell, have requested and submitted applications to be on the new Suncoast Waterway MSBU Advisory Board, which we will vote on next Tuesday. We'll now have an advisory board. So I support in basically what they've been asking. We talked about a little bit at the 17th, keeping their assessment rate at the $738.07, not raising it to $1,525. Let the MSBU Advisory Committee over the next year work on what their needs are out there, working with staff, and then we'll go from there. But I would support revising this current resolution to the current number, not raising it to $1,525. So I will make a motion on the resolution to approve the resolution with that modification.
Second. Motion second to approve that modification. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, is there any opposition to the motion? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, for the record, we're talking about revised resolution packet option 2.
I wrote number 2 right there.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion and a second for revised resolution packet 2. Any further discussion? Hearing none, is there any opposition? Hearing no opposition, packet option 2 is approved.
With the modifications.
With the modification as indicated by Commissioner Doherty and made in the motion. I have to make some amendments here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this portion. And so the MSBU special meeting is adjourned, and we will now call to order the public hearing on the proposed county budget fiscal year 2023-2024. Let the record reflect that all commissioners are present. And I will turn it over, I have to do citizens input on agenda items. So anyone wishing to speak on the agenda items on this meeting may, I've got cards. You'll also have a public hearing. So at this portion, you get 3 minutes. At the public hearing, you get 5 minutes. And my first card is David Grossman. My second card is Stacy Ware. My third card is Kat Pellegrino.
I'm just going to ask him if I can have 10 seconds.
You waived mine, I already spoke.
I'm sorry?
You can waive mine, I already spoke.
Okay.
Can I just say one question? And you walk away?
Yes, sir. I'll allow it if those are no objection from the board. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'm just curious, that was a resolution for the waterway, not the fire. Is it included in the budget, not with the?
It included every MSBU that was considered here.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Is David Grossman here? I think he's left. Ms. Ware?
Oh, good evening, Commissioners. I'm Stacy Ware. I'm Finance Director for Roger D. Eaton, Charlotte County Clerk of the Circuit Court and County Comptroller. I'm here in regards to our office's budget request for fiscal year 2023-24. I am pleased to report the Clerk's office has successfully reduced our budget for each of the last 7 years since Clerk Eaton has been in office and is the only constitutional officer to do so. This year, the reduction is 1.9% for a total 7-year reduction of 11.9%. In addition to lowering our budget each year, the Clerk's office has returned excess funds to the Board of County Commissioners and its taxpayers each of the past 5 years, totaling approximately $3.1 million. We are able to do this because of our services have become more efficient, and in addition, our customer service has increased to a 98% approval rate. Our office and Clerk Eaton are proud to support the board's goal of an efficient and effective government through transparency and accountability, benefiting the citizens of Charlotte County. I respectfully request the approval of our budget submitted on behalf of the Clerk's office. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Clerk. My next card, this is on the budget, is Sheriff Finian.
Waive.
Okay. Mr. Smith, Gordon Smith, indicated for public safety, that would have been the previous meeting. Mr. Russell, is he still here? Michael Cartwright. Gary Krieger. Tammy Kalin. Looks like she left it. Okay, thank you. Dave Kalin. It doesn't say senior or junior, so.
Ditto to what I spoke about earlier.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir. Paul Hayden. Okay. Mr. Kesselring.
Just one thing I forgot, my taxes went up 29%. Everyone says it's misinformation that the whole tax rate's gone up 25, mine went up 29, just so you know.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Canker.
I just spoke without the card.
Thank you. And I have Felicia Jovet. Felicia? Okay, I have no further cards. So with that, we will move on to presentation.
You called him, did you
What's
not?
that?
Dave?
I'm sorry?
My card was number 12.
I called.
You called that, Dave.
Well, actually, you were first and he was second. Sorry. Go ahead, come on. Go ahead. Sorry about that, Dave.
Okay.
Dave Kalin, Charlotte County resident. We'll start with my tax assessment here for this year, my trip notice. My personal residence, 28% increase, no construction on the site. Vacant lot, that one was just purchased, so I don't have a comparable. An additional vacant lot with no structures, 292% increase. Another vacant lot, 37% increase. Another vacant lot. These are all agricultural. 42% increase. Another vacant lot, 51% increase. I'm very confused as to why they're not all equal, because all these lots are right together. They're all used for the same purpose. So I have sat down with the taxing authority. Yes. And so it is a very convoluted system in the calculations. A little more easier reading would be a lot better because it's not a 3% max, and I know vacant lots don't fall into that. That's under Save Your Homes. But under Save Your Homes, I'm still confused why I got a 28% increase. This board continues to tax the citizens like we're your personal bank account. I've had to reduce my spending and work harder just to exist in this current economy. I've had to start new businesses to try to create other revenue streams just to keep up. It's time for you gentlemen now to start reducing and looking. Earlier, Commissioner Teseo said, where's the bloat? Do you guys really need 5 secretaries? Is it that busy? Do we need to continue to purchase palm trees to beautify our roads in this economic condition? That is millions per year. We get into a lot of these little spitting matches that we could keep going back and forth on what's bloat, what's a level of service, what's important and what's not important. I'm all for having a beautiful community, but at the same time, I'm all for not being homeless. So let's continue to work on this budget. And make no mistake, gentlemen, people are angry. You're working on making us broke at this point. This is a recipe for a revolution. It happened in 1773 with the Tea Party. At this pace, in this political environment, the next revolution's around the corner. There's nothing more motivated or driven than a group of citizens pushed to the edge of financial ruin, overregulation, or homelessness. Over the past few years, I've watched this board weaponize code enforcement. It's another revenue stream. I would encourage you to please reduce that. That's all my time I have for now.
Thank you, sir. I'll pull it out. Is there anyone else? I read all the cards, but was there anyone else?
Okay. Then we're going to go ahead and move into the presentation. Mr. Berger, the floor is yours, sir.
Commissioners, this is the first public hearing for the fiscal year 24-25 budget. In terms of the agenda, we're going to review the budget process very quickly, look at the proposed millage rates, do a short presentation of the budget, and of course what we're looking for tonight is for you to adopt the tentative rates and budgets, and then of course those will be brought back to you again at the September 19th, second public hearing. So review the budget process. I always go through this very quickly, more for the public's sake than for yours, because I know you've got it memorized. 4 major stages of the budget process. First stage is establishing broad goals, and of course that's your responsibility in terms of, and you do that through your strategic planning process. Then stage 2, it turns back into the organization for us to develop approaches to achieving those goals and bring those back to you. Stage 3 is then developing a budget. And by budget, we don't mean just the dollars and the cents. That's all of the resources that come to bear. Equipment, people, time, technology, all those things. And then stage 4, evaluating the performance and making adjustments. And of course, that happens on an ongoing basis. Every 2 weeks you meet, and every 2 weeks you make some kind of adjustment to that budget. This is just the same thing, only laid out as a calendar, the amount of work and intensity that goes into the